Thank you, councillors. Almighty God, we, the representatives of the citizens of the City of Brisbane, are assembled here to strive and care for the welfare of our city and all its people. Lord, we ask that you guide us in the decisions we make here today. Amen. We acknowledge this country and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as traditional custodians, their language, songs and dance. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. May we continue to peacefully walk together in respect and in caring for this country and one another. Please be seated. I declare the meeting open. Are there any apologies?
Mr Chair, I advise that Councillor Marks will be absent today, and I move that she be granted a leave of absence from the meeting.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Hutton that Councillor Marks be granted leave of absence from today's meeting. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. I move that Councillor Strunk be granted a leave of absence.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Cook, that Councillor Strunk be granted leave of absence from today's meeting. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Confirmation of minutes, please.
Mr Chair, I move that the minutes of the 4,681st meeting held on Tuesday, 31st of May 2022 be received, taken as read and confirmed.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the minutes of the 4,681st meeting of Council held on the 31st of May 2022 be received, taken as read and confirmed. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillors, we have a public participant here today. I'd like to call on Mr James Lunham, who will address the Chamber on Council's handling of complaints by residents of the Aurora Tower. Billy is showing Mr Lunham to his chair, and while we're waiting, I'd like to acknowledge the former councillor, Councillor Norm Wyndham, sitting in the public gallery today. Welcome, welcome, former councillor Norm Wyndham. Thanks, Mr Lunham. You have 5 minutes when the mic's turned on. You're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Chair, Lord Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today on the matter of noise emissions from the next DC building at 20 Wharf Street, as they affect residents of the Aurora Tower and many of its apartments just metres across the street. Thank you in particular to councillors and staff who have already aided aggrieved residents. I speak as an individual owner resident and city ratepayer who would ordinarily find the evolving situation to be barely believable, were it not a physical reality. I first brought it to the attention of 2 councillors and staff in early 2021 and was one of about 20 resident signatories of a petition to the council seeking relief from noise experienced as excessive for residents under environmental law. We seek remediation of the excessive environmental noise emitted by the unusually big and prominent air conditioning plant on the 20 Wharf Street roof. The uncovered operation of the plant in an established part residential area was allowed without planning approval by the council for more than a decade, to which I alerted council staff. I refer you to council development applications online. A subsequent new application and approval in 2021 has, I believe, been as dubious as the first process in 2011. A flawed process produces a flawed outcome. There is no need to go into much detail about that here, as information can be and will be and has been provided by email. I personally reject the lawfulness of both planning approvals in 2011 and 2021 because of the absence of public consultation through notification required under the former and present acts for such a change in approval conditions. The change in conditions did not occur in 2011 because it was not applied for. All that was mentioned was a basement fuel storage application. Applications are not what might be inferred from planners looking at drawings. Then in 2011 it was put through as a minor change, quite unlawfully I think under the Planning Act. What is sought now is immediate and substantial action by Council to investigate and enforce compliance for noise levels received at the Aurora from 20 Wharf Street externally and internally within their apartments. That includes credible monitoring of the noise by Council or independent contractors. Now, please, we will work with Council towards this end, with the residents. We are not aware of any member of Council or its staff personally checking the noise. Please stand with us on our balconies and witness what we hear and see. I acknowledge efforts by Next DC staff to try to reduce noise levels, which first became a profound nuisance in my experience in the 2021 summer when machinery malfunctioned. There was a temporary improvement. But we residents believe the noise has for some reason become only worse, especially this year. The practical sticking point is that a lasting solution could cost perhaps a few $1 million of company money, with company consultants saying in the DA documents that a whole new floor would have to be created to meet those pre-December conditions and contain the plant. As well as rapid compliance action I've just mentioned, I ask that Council appoint a review of the whole saga by one of its committees, or preferably by an independent reviewer such as a QC or former environmental judge. That is, a review of legality and process and the applications themselves, and of the need for any changes in Council process and the Planning Act. If the Council finds itself unable to do this, we Aurorians, as we call ourselves, will have to seek a review from another level of government. So over to you, Council. These are issues not only for those who are so far involved, but for the whole community, which needs to see soundness in planning and compliance. Once expressions such as a secure location of a company's data storage servers, referring to NextDC's business, supported the Brisbane is open for business mantra, and that was seen as enough. Now the community, as we've seen in election results, is pushing back against such simplification where living conditions are affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Lornham. Civic Cabinet Chair, like to respond? Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and I thank Mr Lanham for coming in today and addressing Council regarding the complaints by residents from the Aurora Towers for excessive noise emissions from Next DC Centre at 20 Wharf Street. As I'm sure you're aware, Mr Lanham, the site was originally granted approval on the 3rd of November 1983 for a commercial premises, involving the redevelopment of the site for a 7-storey building that included 2 basements. This approval was granted in 1978 under the town plan at the time and triggered an assessment code that did not require public notification. As you mentioned, on March 21st, Council approved an application for industry under Schedule 2, which was the fuel burning for the electric standby generators. This development application required impact assessment under City Plan 2000 and was publicly notified in accordance with the requirements under Section 297 of the Sustainable Planning Act 2019. No submissions were received during the assessment of this application. The approved development did not identify noise level requirements. However, it did require that the applicant submit certification to the development services that the plant and equipment is adequately noise attenuated. I'm advised that Development Services has received an acoustical certification with the application documentation as part of the most recent S81 minor change application. This addressed the principal centre zone code, industry code and noise impact assessment planning policy under Brisbane City Plan 2014 and has therefore achieved compliance with Council's criteria in accordance with the Noise Impact Assessment Planning Scheme policy. With regards to the complaints made by the residents of Aurora Towers, Council received an initial complaint in January 2021 about noise from the site, specifically the plant and equipment noise that you mentioned from residents for Aurora Towers. Following the complaint, council officers from Compliance and Regulatory Services investigated, and as a result of the development application, was submitted to council on the 30th of April 2021. This application was granted approval on the 3rd of December 2021. As part of the S81 minor change application, documentation was required to be submitted to council within 6 months to confirm that the plant and equipment was adequately noise attenuated in accordance with council's noise impact assessment planning scheme policy. The certification was received by council on the 22nd of February 2022, and compliance with the development condition and no further noise reading is required. Council officers have engaged with the residents of Aurora Towers through the process from January 2021. Moving forward, council officers are limited with what action can be taken. Residents can choose to contact the Queensland Government Disputes Resolution Centre on 32396007 for free advice and mediation services. This is an alternative to taking disputes to court. Should mediation fail, an application to the Queensland Civil and Administration Tribunal to resolve the issue with the neighbours can be made. Can I thank you again for your time coming to council today to highlight these issues, and I'm glad to hear that you initially mentioned council officers had been able to help you up to this point. If there is anything else that council officers can do to support you within our jurisdiction, we would be more than happy to do so. I wish you luck with next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. May I have a copy of that statement?
It'll be available on Hansard on the recording. Thank you, Mr. Lanning. Councillors, I draw your attention to the next item on the agenda. Question time. Are there any questions of the Lord Mayor or a Civic Cabinet Chair, any of the standing committees? Councillor Mackay.
Thanks, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, our double-decker City Cats are now a staple of the Brisbane River. With the launch of the latest double-decker City Cat this morning, can you please update the Chamber on how the Schrinner Council is continuing to invest in our public transport network, getting residents home sooner and safer?
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay, for the question. I know you're particularly interested in the reactivation of the river after the recent devastating floods that we've had. And an important part of the recovery process is making sure that our City Cat and Ferry network is up and running again. And we have now 2/3 of the network up and running as 13 terminals have come back online, City Cat services and ferry services running every 15 minutes. And that is such an important thing following the devastation that we saw just 3 months ago. But today, there was another important milestone in terms of our investment in public transport, and in particular river transport in the City of Brisbane. We launched today the 5th double-decker City Cat. The City Cat that is manufactured and designed here in Brisbane, built by Brisbane people, and is an absolutely incredible piece of equipment that will serve the people of Brisbane for many decades to come. But this one was a double-decker City Cat with a difference. This one was the first where we've installed as a trial a shade sail on the top deck. Now, people do love the opportunity to see that view of Brisbane that you can see from the top deck of a City Cat, see all of the sights up and down the river, but obviously there are a number of months of the year where it gets quite hot. Based on the feedback that we'd received, based on our own requests through to the shipbuilder, Ozships, they were able to manufacture a purpose-built addition to the vessel this time, which was a shade sail for the top. Now, it sounds like a pretty simple thing, but this is not something you can rush down to Bunnings and get. This is something that had to be designed with a lot of engineering involved. City Cats can travel 24 to 25 knots on the river. On top of that, you also get significant wind loading. And so add the speed of the vessel plus the wind loading, we're talking significant structural work that had to be done to the vessel to accommodate this shade sail. So that work has been done, it's been tested, and now it's a great opportunity for the people of Brisbane to try out this new vessel over the coming weeks and months and to see how they like the experience. The good news is this has been designed by the same people who built the first 4 double-decker City Cats, and there is an opportunity for some retrofitting to occur to earlier City Cats if that is something that the community wants to see. So it's a great addition to our already fantastic fleet, continuing to improve the design of the vessel little bit by little bit as we go forward, using that local expertise and knowledge and know-how. And it was great to be on site down at Murray this morning with Ali Anderson, who is a fantastic representative, not only for local Indigenous people, but as a sportswoman in the AFL Lions women's team, and one of the, I guess, the highest achieving members of that team, helped us to launch the boat on the Brisbane River this morning. The vessel will go into service as soon as possible, along with the other double-decker City Cats, the other standard City Cats, and also the Kitty Cats that are on the river as well. It's, as I said, all part of our significant investment in our public transport network and our river transport network. And I see these as very much an icon for Brisbane as we go in towards the 2032 Olympics. We know that one of the first things that people will do when they visit Brisbane is to jump on one of those City Cats, and that's why we're continuing to make them better and better, both for the people of Brisbane and also visitors that come to our wonderful city. We obviously are seeing patronage as well coming back after a challenging few years with COVID. We know that COVID did impact significantly on public transport patronage, but we're seeing that now continue to improve. There's a way to go, which is why we're continuing to invest in public transport for our city, whether it's the City Cats being built here and put on the river, whether it's the new Kitty Cats that have added to the fleet, or whether it's the Brisbane Metro that we're trialling the pilot vehicle on now. We are committed to investing in public transport. It is a really important thing for the future of our city to move people around seamlessly, and it's why we invest heavily in public and active transport for our city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Well, thanks very much, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, you recently announced cuts and indefinite delays to a number of suburban projects to pay for flood recovery, in your words. The North Brisbane Bikeway, Enoggera Sport and Recreation Precinct, Mowbray Park, Vision and 2 West End pedestrian bridges have all been cut by you and your LNP administration, but something you haven't cut, Lord Mayor, is your personal self-promotion budget. Now, you haven't said whether you'll be scaling back your living in Brisbane political flyers or killing off the Brisbane app that you use to promote yourself. So, Lord Mayor, yes or no, will you cut your shameless self-promotion budget to help pay for Brisbane's flood recovery?
Lord Mayor.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Cassidy. Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, Councillor Cassidy is well aware that the cost of the flood to the people of Brisbane and the Brisbane City Council budget is $330 million. $330 million. So scaling back on a newsletter that is actually wanted by the people of Brisbane and appreciated by the people of Brisbane, a newsletter that was actually introduced by the Labor Council and the Labor Lord Mayor Jim Sawley, and one that has met many decades of providing useful information to the people of Brisbane. They now see that that will somehow magically, through a magic pudding, solve every financial problem in the city. And so a newsletter that costs 20 cents per household to produce and deliver is apparently going to fill a $320 million problem. So you can see, Mr. Chair, why opposition councillors have trouble with the numbers. They really do. To suggest that a newsletter will generate savings of $320 million is ludicrous. To suggest that a newsletter that is valued by the people of Brisbane and costs 20 cents per household per publication will somehow magically make $320 million appear, I think is being very misleading. But I did also want to use Councillor Cassidy's own words because he was asked on 4BC recently about whether the Living in Brisbane newsletter should be scrapped. That question was put to him, not by me, but by one of the journalists. And his response was, newsletters can be quite useful. We don't think they should necessarily be scrapped, but we should depoliticise them. Well, there's nothing in that statement that I disagree with. There is nothing in that statement that I disagree with. There is a use and a purpose for these publications because it informs the ratepayers of Brisbane what we are doing on their behalf, but also there is nothing party political in those publications, and in fact a search back through the record of every single Living in Brisbane publication, we've only discovered one politicisation, and that was actually with the Labor Council under Lord Mayor Jim Sawley, where they would get their political media releases and put them word for word into Living in Brisbane, including the quotation marks from Labor councillors. So the only politicisation of this newsletter that's ever happened has been under Labor, and now they somehow claim to be against it. We have taken out any councillors...
Point of order to you, Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much. Just requesting that you draw the Lord Mayor back to the question. He's alluded to an answer that he won't be cutting it, but the question was clear, yes or no, will he be cutting the Living in Brisbane publication to help fund flood recovery?
The Lord Mayor is answering the question.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, Councillor.
Also, just wanted to clarify, the Lord Mayor said it was costing 20 cents a letter to deliver and print. Is that right? That's pretty good value.
That's not a point of order, Councillor Street.
I agree with you. It is very good value. It is very good value. It is unaddressed mail.
Councillor Street, please.
It is unaddressed mail, and we strive to get the best deal for the ratepayers when it comes to this.
Councillor Street, please.
And so what I can say is that I agree with Councillor Cassidy that newsletters can be quite useful, and we don't think they should necessarily be scrapped. And so there is no disagreement here from me. We are in a bipartisan manner supporting the continuation of providing information to the people of Brisbane to make sure that they know what their council is doing on behalf of them, and to make sure they know important information about the services that are coming up, the projects that are coming up. These are very important things, and I do take Councillor Shree's interjection. It does sound like good value because it is good value. Now, there's been some commentary about the size of the newsletter growing. It's simply because we do far more than what Labor administrations have done in the past. We're building more infrastructure, we're providing more services, we're delivering more, and there is far more to talk about. There is far more to talk about these days, and we know that the people of Brisbane do value us keeping them up to date with what we're doing on their behalf. But to suggest that somehow cancelling a newsletter or a couple of publications is going to deal with a $320 million problem is seriously misleading the people of Brisbane and raises serious questions about the opposition's understanding of basic finances.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is to the Chair of Infrastructure Committee, Councillor Wines. Councillor Wines, with regular council business continuing on right across the city, the Schrinner Council's plan to rebuild and recover remains front and centre of this council's agenda. Could you please update the chamber on the latest in our efforts to rebuild and recover?
Councillor Wines.
Can I thank Councillor Hutton for her question and her ongoing interest. As a councillor whose ward was heavily affected by river flooding, I know that she takes a very keen interest in making sure that the rebuild and recover program is a benefit not only to her own residents but to all residents of the city. And can I thank her for that interest. A few weeks ago I was able to provide this chamber with an update through the council, through the committee report process. I've also been able to provide a number of updates through the question time system as well. But as many would recall, over that time we've had 285 lineal kilometres of road impacted, and of those 78 were requiring significant resurfacing repairs. This morning's committee, and you'll hear in next week's report, went over 2 modern ways to assess road bases and road surfaces. It's a firm called PMS will be doing a particular type of laser review of the road surface, and another company called ARRB will be doing another type of heavy vehicle assessment, and that went over this morning. But that's one way that we're assessing the surface to see what level of degradation has occurred to the roads and what will be required to invest in our road network to maintain the current level of service that we have. Speaking to the current level of service, I can inform the chamber that this council has, over the last 3 months, filled more than 30,000 potholes over 176 suburbs. Now, that is a lot, but with the kind of weather we've been having both in late Feb and March, and then the ongoing unseasonal rain in May, has caused a great deal of water damage to our roads, and we are working very diligently to address all of those. And to give some context, we are roughly doing 10,000 potholes a month, and we would typically do 6,000 to 6,500 a month in an ordinary period. So we have vastly improved the amount of work that we're doing. So that's an example of something very straightforward. Something very basic but yet very important about the way we're managing our road network. Can I also, back to the Jamboree ward, can I speak to the 3 bridges that were damaged as part of our cycle and pedestrian network, in particular Coringal Drive Bridge, which will need to be, I can inform Councillor Hutton, will need to be removed and replaced in its entirety. And the new replaced item will be, once we've rebuilt and recovered, a much more flood resilient asset that we would hope would be, if not impervious to future events, one that would be cleaned and replaced quickly, or one that is much more durable. We are working closely with the state on what we call betterment projects, which is a good example of the sort of things that we are doing to make sure that the assets, that when we return them in place, are better and more flood resilient than the ones we had in the past. Staying on bikeways, for the interest of the council, this council removed more than 300 cubic metres of mud from the Cultural Centre boardwalk alone, and that is but one example of many cleanups to pedestrian and cycle assets. Of the 396 kilometres of off-road bikeway owned by the City Council, 235 kilometres were impacted, and of which 170 lineal kilometres were cleaned by the 1st of April to ensure that they were available for use for the school holidays. Now, there is
Councillor Johnston, please. Sorry, continue, Councillor Wines.
That's all right. There is a lot of work being focused on the Kedron Brook Bikeway, and as many would know, there are at least 7 locations of interest to this council for reinstatement and potential betterment. I've noticed that there's some debate about whether that should be, in what order that should be done, and there's been some criticism of this council's prioritisation of replacement and repair. I don't agree with those assessments. I think that repairing existing bikeways and then improving them so that they are flood resilient should be the priority of this council over the next year, if not near years, rather than expansion of the bikeway network. Reinstatement and replacing existing facilities has to be the #1 priority. Can I also make mention of our work with the Queensland Recovery Authority? The council is working closely with them to better understand council's role in the engagement with people who need...
Councillor Wines, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Following the February floods, Council closed 12 playgrounds, there are many more still closed, in Tennyson Ward, hosed down the equipment and then reopened them without decompacting and removing the sewage-contaminated base and soft fall under the play equipment. Until last week, 11 of these playgrounds were open without any softfall at all. These playgrounds have now had new softfall spread straight over the top of the flood-contaminated base. Most of these playgrounds were flooded by sewerage. Do you think that the failure to properly clean up and remediate children's playgrounds before reopening them is appropriate?
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
And that cheat sheet won't be right because I've been asking for well over a month.
Councillor Johnston, you've asked your question.
Unfortunately, we continue to see wrong information being put out by Councillor Johnston, and just because it's claimed, just because it's said, doesn't mean it's accurate. And so the council officers have completed damage assessments right across the city, and whether it's roads, parks, playgrounds, every kind of asset that...
Point of order.
Point of order to you, Councillor Johnston.
In the questions on notice today, it says specifically that road assessments and playground assessments have not been completed. So are the questions on notice correct, or is the Lord Mayor correct?
The Lord Mayor is answering the question, Councillor Johnston.
He's telling us things that are not in the question. Answer the question.
And so council officers have continued to put in an incredible effort right across the city. It's been the largest audit effort ever conducted in our city, and every available resource that can be found is out, or has been out, and continues to be out across the city to determine what work needs to be done, and also the status of any repairs and ongoing recovery work that is happening. And when it comes to playgrounds, we've had obviously significant impact with a number of playgrounds being flooded. Approximately 300 playgrounds, I'm speaking from memory, were inundated across the city, and there's obviously significant number of playgrounds in low-lying areas in the city, alongside creeks, alongside the river, and they have certainly been impacted. When these playgrounds were inundated, the officers inspected to determine whether the software for loss, debris, or the presence of other materials such as mud warranted the closure of the playgrounds until rectification works are complete. Once the visual inspections have been carried out and confirmed that the softfall is free,
Councillor Johnston,
is free of debris, and that mud hasn't adversely impacted on the safety of the playground or the performance of the playground, then we do try and open them as quickly as possible. Councillor Johnston has claimed that you can't see sewage. Well, you can see sewage, and you can certainly smell sewage. And certainly we and our officers deal with any kind of issues like that in not only in reference to the health and safety of the community, but also in consultation with government departments that have a remit in this field as well. And so we work with the state authorities to determine what are suitable locations that can be reopened and under what conditions, and then reopen those as soon as possible. We are aware of a number of important things. First of all, there has been a nationwide shortage of softfall material, and that is affecting not just Brisbane City Council, but councils right across Australia. With this recent flooding that we've had here, and then other councils across the eastern seaboard have had flooding and storm damage, and that goes from Queensland all the way through to New South Wales, and Sydney councils as well have been impacted. And so playgrounds all along the eastern seaboard have been impacted by storms and flooding. And if there's 300 in Brisbane alone, you can imagine the number across the nation that have been impacted in recent times. And so we're working as quickly as we can to secure and procure replacement softfall, and as soon as we can get that into the parks and playgrounds, and as soon as we're satisfied that they're safe to reopen, we do reopen them.
Yes, thank you. Just on relevance, my question was about 11 flood-affected playgrounds in Tennyson Ward that were not properly decompacted and cleaned up before new softfall was put on them. Is this appropriate? That was my question I asked the Lord Mayor. You can't see bacteria.
Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor is answering the question.
And so we rely on the advice of the experts when it comes to when a playground can be open, and we would never open a playground that we thought was a safety risk. We would just not do it. I mean, council, by its nature, is quite risk-averse when it comes to things like this. And rightly so, rightly so. We're talking about the safety of children and the community. And so we would never open a playground if we thought it was unsafe to open it. So I just question those claims. I just think that we have done the right thing here, and we're working as quickly as we can to get softfall replaced and to bring playgrounds back online. We're also aware that there's significant demand in the community for these playgrounds to reopen. And so we do want to reopen them as quickly as we can and as quickly as they can safely be reopened. And that's what, based on all the information that I've been provided, that's exactly what we're doing. We are doing the right thing and we're putting safety first, and that will continue to happen. So as soon as we can make the playgrounds safe and reopen them, we will continue to do so. The audit process is ongoing, and we will continue to do the right thing by the people of Brisbane.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Further questions? Councillor Atwood on the screen. Microphone, Councillor Atwood. We're not hearing you. We see you, we can't hear you. You've got your mic on?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can. Proceed.
Okay, sorry, thank you, Chair. My question is to the Acting Chair of the City Standards Committee, Councillor Toomey. Councillor Toomey, in the 2022 flooding and rain event saw a higher than normal amount of potholes popping up across our city. Can you please update the Chamber on the huge body of work that has been carried out, keeping our roads smooth and safe for Brisbane motorists?
Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Chair, and through you can I thank Councillor Atwood for the question. As a result of the severe weather event in February, our asphalt and aggregate crew have been fixing over 10,000, I'll say it again, 10,000 potholes per month, which is a phenomenal effort for the residents of Brisbane. I'd like to thank all of our hard-working officers who have helped to deliver this historic response to our city's road infrastructure. The worst pothole-creating weather event is a slow-moving, intense rainstorm when roads are inundated, such as the kind of rain we've experienced in Brisbane's subtropical climate this year so far. Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen more rain across Brisbane, and it is important to acknowledge that this means our crews are not able to go out and complete the repairs in those conditions. With desirable conditions forecast, the residents of Brisbane can be assured that our crews will be busy across Brisbane, ensuring that our roads are smoother and safer for motorists. What's important, but never gets highlighted enough, Mr Chair, is that we are doing this in an environmentally friendly and sustainable manner as well. Our commitment to a clean, green and sustainable city continues, with over 200 tonnes of material being recycled at our Pine Mountain recycling facility to create new and improved roads, car parks and other infrastructure across the year. And so, as part of our award-winning program, we use 7,000 tonnes of recycled glass every year, along with more than 60,000 tonnes of asphalt from our road, which we recrush, grade before using back at our Eagle Street and River asphalt plants for reuse. Mr Chair, we need residents to ensure that we respond immediately to each and every pothole. We're asking residents to be the eyes in our suburbs and report potholes as they appear. This can be done by calling the contact centre or via the Report It app. The Report It app is a great source that makes the reporting of potholes hassle-free. And over the weekend, I had a community corner and was approached by 4 young men who had just bought their first car, a 1985 Falcon. Nice. I know. And they came up to thank me for the response time that council was achieving at repairing their potholes. And I actually said to them, you can help us by getting the Report It app and reporting those potholes. and then going into the draw for $100 at each month. Can I tell you, Mr Chair, these kids were so enthused that they could win $100 to go as fuel into their Falcon. They could not believe themselves.
Mid-80s Falcon, $300.
It'll chew it. I know they'll have to go from petrol station to petrol station, but you know, $100 is $100 to young kids. Mr Chair, this is the only administration with a clear plan to keep Brisbane's roads smooth for motorists, and we will continue to deliver on our plan, tackle traffic congestion and help residents get home quicker and safer.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, when the LNP took over City Hall almost 2 decades ago, the average rates bill was around $990 per year. Now, the average rates bill is nearly $1,800 per year. Under the LNP, rates have almost doubled. This morning, ABC Radio was reporting that you said ratepayers should expect to pay even more. Lord Mayor, how much further are you going to rake hike in the upcoming budget?
Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Mr Chair, I'm not sure if there's a rule that councillors can't ask the same question again and again and again, especially when it's already been answered. I don't know. But the reality is you only have to wait until next Wednesday when the budget is delivered, and you will be able to see exactly what is in the budget. But I do confirm again, it won't be anything like the 6% plus rate increases that Labor delivered. Councillor Cook was referring to history, and there's some important lessons in history, and that is when Labor gets in charge of an administration, whether it's a city, a state or a nation, taxes always go up, taxes are always higher. And so what we will see this time is we've worked incredibly hard to make sure we keep rates as low as possible. But at the same time, residents are getting more and more value for their money. They are getting more and more for their rates, because if you look at, and the best way to describe this, the best way to illustrate this is if you have a look at all of the surrounding councils around Brisbane and in South East Queensland, Brisbane residents pay less. Brisbane residents pay less and they get more. They pay less and they get more. And that is something that we will continue. And so as much as Labor wants to criticise, the reality is surrounding councils show the real story here. In those other council areas, they don't necessarily have the flood damage that we've suffered. They don't necessarily invest in the major projects that we have to deliver because the state government fails to deliver. So they don't actually build the same type of infrastructure that we provide, yet their rates are higher.
Councillor Cassidy.
Rates are higher.
Councillor Cassidy, please.
And so,
Councillor Cassidy.
And so we know that residents in other areas pay more and they get less than Brisbane. And so we will continue to make sure that Brisbane residents get more for their money that they contribute towards the running of Australia's fastest growing city. We will ensure that by doing the right thing and pausing a number of projects, that we can make sure those funds are redirected into the critical priority right now, which is rebuilding and recovering after the flood. And we will do that because it's the right thing to do. A Labor administration would simply pass on any costs directly to the residents of Brisbane. They wouldn't change anything. They would just say, oh, sorry, the bill has come in, it's gone up, and you're going to pay. And that's the Labor's approach. And we don't do that. We've worked hard to run a responsible budget and to reduce the impact on ratepayers. And we know that the cost of living has gone up significantly. We're conscious of that, but the cost of council doing business has gone up significantly too. And so if inflation for Brisbane is 6%, you can expect that the cost of providing the council services and the projects will have also gone up by at least 6%. And so we're mindful of that as well, and we will continue to strive to make sure that Brisbane residents pay less and get more than other council areas surrounding, and we will also continue to strive to make sure
Councillor Johnston.
that We will also continue to strive to make sure that Brisbane residents are seeing that we're investing in the future of our city. And so we're building for the future. We are investing in the infrastructure that our city needs as it grows. Because if you don't do that, then the people of Brisbane know that the lifestyle of our city will suffer. And so we are investing in Brisbane Metro. This should be entirely a state government project. It should be a state government project. And so we started it, and like so many other things, we started it, and then they've come on board now. And they've come on board.
Councillor
just
Adamant,
like
please.
with all of the major infrastructure projects that we've kicked off. And in fact, it was Brisbane City Council that first proposed the busway network in the first place. And that's correct. No, it was Maureen Hayes, not Jim Sewley. Maureen was a champion and very visionary for her time. And we saw that the council proposed the busway network, and then state government was shamed into actually doing something about it eventually. And once again, with Brisbane Metro, we've proposed next generation busway network, next generation turn up and go transport, and then the state government has finally come on board. And we are grateful that they've come on board, but I tell you what, it wasn't easy to get them on board. It was not easy. And yet to this day,
Lord Mayor,
despite the fact...
your time has expired. Further questions? Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is to the Chair of City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee, Councillor Allen. Councillor Allen, following a request from the local councillor and the Chamber of Commerce to begin a new neighbourhood plan in their local area, Council undertook a comprehensive planning exercise with the residents of Sandgate, Deagon and Shorncliffe. Could you please update the Chamber on how this local plan protects the character of these suburbs?
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and I thank Councillor Hammond for the question. Well, it's certainly been a journey to get to where we are today, and we are in the home straight. There are a few more steps to have this plan completed, but the existing neighbourhood plan for the area dates back to 2000. A lot has changed in Brisbane over that 2 decades, and the community, along with the local Chamber of Commerce, felt a refresh was needed to manage how the area would grow over the next 10 years and beyond. We've been working closely with residents and other stakeholders for around 3 years now to develop a plan that both protects the things that people love most about this area while revitalising the local economy, creating more local jobs and providing greater housing choice for existing and future residents. The project launched in 2019, and together with the community we developed a draft strategy for feedback. As I've said many times in this chamber before, the reason we develop a draft strategy is to introduce and test ideas early in the project, so the community has the chance to refine those concepts and build consensus for a shared vision. While this area is not one of your typical high-growth areas in Brisbane, we are acutely aware of the need to provide greater housing opportunities right across the city, and as we all know, this has become more critical. But it's not just the increasing of supply or the hitting of dwelling targets that matters. It's about providing a more diverse mix of housing to suit resident needs. We have an ageing population, empty nesters, we have first home buyers, and we have vulnerable residents in need of appropriate housing so they can continue to live and work in the communities that they've been in often for decades. These issues span right across the city, and it requires a measured and considered approach to ensure the right housing is provided in the right locations. Brisbane has limited greenfield areas, therefore the city's focus on housing supply needs to focus on infill development to provide our housing needs. When it comes to Sandgate, it was an obvious choice to focus this growth around the town centre, close to public transport and services, a town planning no-brainer. The draft strategy allowed for an increase from 4 stories to 6-storey heights in the town centre, including a mix of ground floor, retail and dining, some commercial office space in the middle and residential on top. A place for people to live, work and play. But the vision drew mixed reactions. Some supported the plan as they recognised the benefits to local business and the community it would bring. but some oppose the increased density, raising concerns about the loss of character and the village feel. Again, this is the reason we release a draft vision and strategy, to test the ideas and views of the community in the early planning phase. This feedback informed the presentation of the draft neighbourhood plan, which was released for consultation mid-last year. The revised proposal sought to retain the existing 4-storey building heights in the town centre, with the exception of up to 5 storeys in the Lagoon Street precinct opposite the train station. While this allows for some uplift to the centre, I have to admit I think there is some lost potential here where we could have seen more significant outcomes. On the opposite side of the train station, we've introduced a new residential precinct at the gasworks site, which will allow for new housing up to 3 storeys. The greater employment opportunities have been introduced into the Rainbow Street precinct that allow for new, cleaner industry and business-related activities. The plan has a key focus on protecting the traditional character of this unique Bayside area, with more than 170 new properties added to character listing and 10 new local heritage listings, a good outcome for the community. The final plan will be presented to the Chamber later today for endorsement to progress to the State Government for their final state interest checks and approval to adopt. Mr Chair, I'll be interested to hear Councillor Cassidy's views, as I note he is yet to provide a submission, comment on or offer any vision for his area. Wow. A true lack of leadership from the opposition leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Oh, thanks very much, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, each and every year you allocate yourself a $100,000 allowance from the council budget as a personal allowance. Now, this allowance, so-called allowance, isn't tracked or audited in any way. It's a cash bonus that you pay yourself from the pockets of ratepayers. So, Lord Mayor, in the spirit of transparency, can you please inform the ratepayers of Brisbane what you have spent this allowance on over the last year?
Lord Mayor.
I think it's, Mr Chair, it's back to the future. They lost an election campaign on this line of questioning, despite spending $2.1 million plus on their campaign. Yet they've come back to it. And I've said before, this is the last refuge of someone with no ideas, no agenda, no vision. They just go to this lowest common denominator. I would point out, though, that Councillor Cassidy also gets an allowance with the same guidelines and the same requirements as other chairs of council and myself. And I remember he said he did an Amber Heard. He actually said, "Oh, look, I'm going to pay it back," and then he never did. He never did. And so what we know, he tried to give something to a receptionist.
Order, please, order. Order, Lord Mayor.
He gave one pathetic
order, please,
donation.
all sides.
Why are you all afraid of
Councillor Cassidy, enough, please. Order, all sides. Allow the answer to be heard in silence, please. Lord Mayor.
Now, there was an important inaccuracy in what Councillor Cassidy said, because we know they'll continue to put out things that simply aren't true. And he claimed that somehow I allocated myself this allowance. Well, I do have one thing to thank Jim Sawley for, and it is this allowance, because it was actually Jim Sawley that introduced the allowance. So Jim Sawley allocated an allowance many decades ago, and the same thing exists to this day. And now they rail against it. And as I said, they've lost an election campaign on this line, because people can see that when you talk about things like this, you've completely got no vision. And that's what Labor has, no vision. They have no agenda. They throw mud and they hope that some of it sticks. But the people of Brisbane are smarter than that, and they know that the people that they elect to do a job should be focusing on doing that job, not throwing mud. And so I will continue to work hard for the people of Brisbane to make sure that I am delivering for them. and that includes responsible budgeting. That includes delivering record investment in the suburbs. That includes delivering a record infrastructure spend on the things that matter to a growing city. And that also means looking after our local environment and prioritising our environment and environmental initiatives, and whether it is maintaining a carbon neutral council, whether it is our tree planting agenda, whether it is our bushland preservation levy, or even building bridges for koalas to climb over, we will continue to do the right thing to support our community, to responsibly guide and manage the budget, to make sure that people are getting more value than they see in any other council. Brisbane residents paying less and getting more than any other council in South East Queensland. And we will continue.
Point of order to you, Councillor Cassidy.
The Lord Mayor's talking a lot about hugging koalas at the moment, but my question was about transparency. Will he come clean with the people of Brisbane and tell us what he spent his $100,000 allowance on?
The Lord Mayor's answering a question about the expenditure in the budget.
I've already answered this question countless times. I've already answered this question, but I would simply say this is an allowance that Councillor Cassidy gets himself, and he tells nobody about what he spends it on, and he gave one piddling donation to the bushfire appeal, and then he's pocketed the rest, and now he's accusing me. This is sad. This is just sad.
Thank you, councillors. That ends question time. Thank you. We move on to E&C. Lord Mayor, Establishment and Coordination Committee Report 30 May 2022, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move the report of the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting held on Monday, 30th of May 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that the report of the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting dated Monday, 30 May 2022 be adopted. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Yesterday was Queensland Day, and no prizes for guessing what colour all of our assets were lit up in. It was maroon. And Queenslanders obviously across the state celebrate this important day on the 6th of June every year. And this year marks 163 years since Queensland separated from New South Wales. And so it's appropriate that we've got the State of Origin tomorrow night, and we can remind them that any kind of separation from Queensland was a bad idea for them, but not for us. And so tonight is the eve of Thank a First Responder Day. And to mark this occasion, we'll be lighting up Radcliffe Place, the Tropical Dome, Victoria Bridge and the Story Bridge in, I hate to say it, teal. This is a day that's celebrated across Australia, and it's a day where we say thank you to the 300,000 first responders across the nation. Tomorrow night is Game 1 of the State of Origin to support the Queensland Maroons. Guess what colour we're lighting up our assets in? Again. On Thursday night, we'll be lighting up the Victoria Bridge, Story Bridge, Tropical Dome and Radcliffe Place. In teal again. This is about. This is an initiative to support International Myasthenia Gravis Awareness Month, and which is a disease of the autoimmune and neurological. It's an autoimmune and neurological condition which affects the transmission of messages between the nerve and muscle fibre. On Friday, we'll be lighting up the bridge. The Story Bridge, Tropical Dome, Victoria Bridge, Radcliffe Place in yellow to celebrate the Luminous Lantern Parade. And Brisbane already has such a strong reputation of being a welcoming and friendly city, and we're working with Multicultural Australia to deliver this Lantern Parade, which in the past has had thousands upon thousands of people turn up to celebrate our multicultural diversity. We're looking forward to another great turnout again this time. We're lighting up City Hall in blue on Friday night to support the Big Freeze. This campaign raises awareness and funds for research into motor neuron disease. There are around 2,000 Australians living with this disease, and we want to raise awareness. On Sunday, we'll be lighting up the assets in red, white and blue, as well as yellow to celebrate Philippine Independence Day. On the 12th of June this year, Philippines celebrates 124 years of independence. As you know, they were previously controlled by the Spanish until 124 years ago. Pleased to say that, among other things, Councillor Adam Allen and Councillor Murphy have been successful in getting the Toombul bus interchange reopened and up and running. I know they both put in an incredible amount of effort to get that outcome. Obviously, there's still an ongoing situation with the Toombul Shopping Centre, but we knew that nothing when it comes to the interchange could wait until other issues were resolved. We needed to get the interchange up and running, something that is relied upon by many, many local residents, and also an important interchange between bus and rail across the other side of the road. And so, well done to Councillor Allen, who has been working hard to make that happen, and also to Councillor Murphy, who's been providing support to the efforts to get that up and running. So those bus services to Toombul are up and running again, and that is a good outcome. And once again, another important sign of recovery after the recent floods, and we've got to celebrate these milestones. Item A is the major amendment to City Plan, the Sandgate and District Neighbourhood Plan. Now, I remember very clearly a certain local councillor in this area campaigned very heavily against the neighbourhood plan in the lead up to the election. You know, I know that he loves a good scare campaign, and this was his opportunity. And so it does stick in my craw a little bit when I hear him talking about housing affordability and homelessness, when we see time and time again the councillors on the other side, all of them, actively opposing virtually any kind of new development that happens in their area. Now, it's easy. Councillor Cumming doesn't. I know, actually, sorry. I'll withdraw that. Councillor Cumming, you've been reasonable. Which is why there's a standing invitation to join the LNP team. And, you know, it's there. It's there. The offer's there, and we would welcome you with warm, loving arms. And so Councillor Cumming knows that it is important that this city provides new homes for people to live in. Now, we don't build government housing. The state government builds government housing, but our responsibility, and in fact, the Treasurer just yesterday, I think, was saying what he thought our responsibility was. And so it's important that we put that on the record. So the Treasurer, Cameron Dick, said, "There's no simple answer to the housing challenge in Queensland. There's multiple levers that will all be pulled." He said councils also had a role to play in the release of land and planning approvals, and that the state would be working with the new Albanese government on the future of the National Rental Affordability Scheme. And so the Treasurer, in his own words, say that we need to, as councils, open up more land for housing, and also the approval process is important to him. So you have the state government saying that, and then you have Labor councillors, Greens councillors and independent councillors opposing every kind of development that happens in their area. Every kind. Any change, they oppose it. The opportunity to provide new homes for people, they oppose it. And we see that here when it comes to the Sandgate District Neighbourhood Plan. Now, we know that there has been no formal submission lodged by Councillor Cassidy on this plan, but his submission was in the form of a negative campaign at the last election, where he actively campaigned against higher building heights in Sandgate.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order to you.
Will the Lord Mayor take a question?
Lord Mayor, will you take a question from Councillor Murphy?
Lord Mayor, is it not true that Councillor Cassidy did not make a submission asking for more affordable housing and public housing to be put in by the city into his own local area? Did he not do that? Or did he come in here and campaign for that week after week, but then was silent when it came to his own community? Is that what happened? Is that what you're trying to tell us, Lord Mayor?
Councillor Murphy.
Well, actually, I wasn't trying to tell you that, but you raise a really good point. I was trying to tell you that Councillor Cassidy opposes the provision of more housing in his area, but Councillor Murphy raises a good point in his question. Instead of asking for more affordable housing to be built in his ward, he was silent. And his only advocacy was against the provision of housing, against more homes coming into his area, more businesses coming into his area. And this is the fundamental problem that we see here, where we've got state government acknowledging that part of the solution, it's a complicated matter, but part of the solution is for councils to allow more homes to be provided. That's part of the solution, as well as the state government stepping up and building more government homes. Yet you've got, from their own side, Labor opposition opposing the construction of more new homes in their areas. And so it is very much a case of, from the Labor opposition, from the Greens, from the independent councillor, yes, we need more homes, but not in their electorates, not in their wards, everywhere else, but in their area. And Councillor Sri is a classic when it comes to that. He wants more homes to be built in every other ward except for the Gabba ward. And so we see here an opportunity for the Leader of the Opposition to stand up and show what he believes in. If he believes in making housing more affordable, if he believes in supporting jobs and homes and employment opportunities in his ward, then he could come out and support some more development in his area. But we just don't know what he thinks. We just know that he campaigned against it in an election, but wasn't able to put in a submission when given the opportunity, and certainly wasn't putting in a submission asking for more affordable housing to be built. And I would point out that there is a very big parcel of state government land in that area. So it's already owned by the state government. They're claiming they need spaces to build affordable housing, and what we've heard from Councillor Cassidy is crickets. Crickets. So, you know what, some people might say that the state government-owned land in that part of...
Point of order to you, Councillor Sri.
Will the Mayor take a quick question?
Lord Mayor, will you take a question for Councillor Sri?
Which side are you talking about?
So I'll need an extension of time if I'm going to answer this question, but I'm happy to answer the question.
You've still got 20 seconds.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Sri, there is, I understand, a lot of racing land up in that area that is owned by the state government, and that is already available to the state government for whatever use they would see fit.
Lord Mayor, your time has expired.
Move for extension. Seconded.
An extension of time has been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Hutton. Councillor Landers. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. So the state government does own a large amount of land up there, and instead of them stepping up and doing something with it that could provide a good outcome, what we've seen from the Labor Council for the area is just to oppose anything happening in his area. And so I would simply point out that we see a fundamental hypocrisy in the approach here, where they claim to be supporting affordable housing, they claim to be supporting doing more for the housing crisis that we're seeing, yet when it comes down to making decisions and putting their opinion on something, putting their vote on something, they oppose more homes being built. And so I'll be very fascinated to see Councillor Cassidy's contribution when it comes to this matter. And so going through what the Sandgate Sandgate District Neighbourhood Plan is putting forward. The draft plan was released in mid-2021, and we received around 1,300 responses from the community. I wish it was 1,301, but that unfortunately did not happen. Some of the key takeaways in the final plan: the Sandgate Town Centre will remain at 4 stories, with the exception of one precinct, the Lagoon Street precinct opposite the train station, which will allow for up to 5 stories. A new residential precinct has been introduced at the Gasworks site, which will allow for a mix of housing up to 3 stories. The plan will increase heritage and character protection, with more than 170 properties converted to the character zoning. 10 properties will be listed on the Heritage Register, and 4 properties are identified as pre-1911 homes as well. It also supports the continued function of the Deagon Racing Precinct, because the state had the opportunity to do something with this to help deal with the housing crisis, but they chose not to. And so when they are scrounging around looking for places to build new homes, they're overlooking sites that they already know. And we know that their strategy has been to sell off existing government homes, so supposedly to build new homes. Here is land that they have already, that they don't have to pay anyone for. They don't have to sell existing public homes. They could build something here if they were really committed to it. But we know that they say one thing and do another. And so it is just, I'm just highlighting that they had their opportunity, but obviously we're not forcing anything on them. That is their land to do with what they see fit. If they think there's another purpose that is more important, well, that is their decision to make. I was simply saying this was an opportunity for them to consider, but they chose not to take that opportunity up. So this District Neighbourhood Plan Amendment Package is presented to Council for endorsement and for the final state interest review to go forward. Item B is the Stores Board submission, significant contracting plan for the construction of the new Everton Park Library. The project will more than double the current library floor space and creating more multi-purpose spaces, delivering a vibrant new children's area and making the car parking more accessible through an undercover car park. Obviously, the new library will be so much better than the old one and will deliver a community facility that is fitting of the current day and age, as opposed to the older facility that has been there for some time. In addition, the design will complement its surroundings, with the existing park behind the library also being upgraded as an added benefit to the program and an extra community benefit, I guess. Early works for the Everton Park Library upgrade began in April, with works being undertaken to remove 3 council-owned buildings on South Pine Road, along with some minor vegetation removal. The delivery of the Everton Park Library will build on some of our recent redevelopments in the library space, including the recently refurbished Inala Library. And so we have a clear record of investing in our libraries, upgrading our libraries. Now, Councillor Cook asked me a question about history, and I would use this opportunity to point out that there is only one side of politics that has closed down libraries in recent decades, and that is the Australian Labor Party, who closed down libraries rather than investing in them. We are doing the opposite. We are investing in our libraries. We're upgrading our libraries. Why? Because we believe they are fundamental to our community and important community spaces. And so, yes, we invest in libraries. Yes, we upgrade our libraries. Yes, we refurbish our libraries. And we've got a proud record of doing that consistently right across the city. And it's not just in LNP wards. I just mentioned the Inala Library before that we have invested in as well. So we do it right across the city and we will continue to do so. And this is just the next project of many.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. I rise to speak on both items, and Lord Mayor is a liar.
Lord Mayor.
He is deceptive and he is deceitful.
Councillor Cassidy, please.
And he is not a very good leader of this city. And his
Point of order.
Point of order to you,
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Do something here.
It's been made clear in this place that is not an acceptable term or reference to another councillor, and I ask that to be withdrawn.
Councillor Cassidy, will you withdraw that comment, please?
Are you asking me to withdraw?
I'm asking you to withdraw, please.
I'll withdraw then.
Thank you.
At your direction, Chair. But the contribution we just heard from the Lord Mayor about the major amendment to City Plan, the Sandgate District Neighbourhood Plan, tells you all you need to know about the kind of politician, the kind of deceitful politician that our Lord Mayor is. Just picking up before I get into the substance of what I want to say about this, some of the issues that the Lord Mayor and Councillor Allen has been sort of ad-libbing on, which seems totally at odds with the package that they're bringing to Council today. Now, this is the Lord Mayor who's in charge of this LNP administration, and the planning chair that's in charge seem to be criticising elements of the plan that they are bringing to Council today. We just heard the Lord Mayor say that he thinks the racecourse should be redeveloped into housing.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order
Claim
to you,
to
Lord
be
Mayor.
misrepresented.
Noted.
and all the briefings and feedback I have received from the planning team throughout this process, they have been very steadfast that Council's position, this LNP administration's position, is that that site should be retained for the purposes of racing. So the Lord Mayor gets up today and says the state government should be building housing at the Queensland racing site. And I recall he talks about scare campaigns. I recall a campaign being run by the person that was describing themselves as the Lord Mayor's representative back in 2019, the LNP candidate for the Deagon ward, who started a scare campaign about building housing at the Deagon racecourse. So the LNP have obviously changed their opinion about that now. I'm not sure whether he's checked this off with certain board members of Racing Queensland, because I know that Graham Quirk, when he was mayor of this city, also railed against any changes and any redevelopment of that racecourse. So I'm not sure whether the right hand is talking to the left hand in the LNP these days on those issues. But I know the Lord Mayor doesn't know much about my community, so I suspect he's a bit misguided when it comes to that. But there really isn't that much more you can say about the Sandgate Neighbourhood Plan. Today is a culmination of a sad and sorry process that is emblematic of everything this LNP administration does in the town planning space. This sorry saga goes back to 2019 when the LNP decided that consultation, that community consultation, amounted to some signs, some small corflute signs that they stuck on posts, on street signs and on street lights, and a landing page on a website. They convened a community planning team, as they do, with a couple of dozen people on it who were gagged from discussing things that happened in those meetings with the broader community and certainly with the media. I remember attending all of those community planning team meetings, and I was stalked around the room to ensure that any conversation I had with any resident was reported back to the LNP administration. Now, that kind of behaviour...
A point of order, Chair.
A point of order to you, Councillor.
I just wonder if that's an appropriate reflection on the conduct of council officers at a meeting, that they were stalking Councillor Cassidy around the room, and if Councillor Cassidy might reflect on that and then withdraw it.
I'm going to allow for the purpose of political debate, Councillor Cassidy.
It certainly felt like it. Now, that kind of behaviour that we saw throughout those so-called periods of consultation doesn't inspire confidence in a community that this was going to be a fair and genuine process over the coming years. Now, when I first received a briefing about the draft strategy, which Councillor Allen and the Lord Mayor have referred to being released, I had actually read about that and read all the details of that in the Courier Mail many hours before council officers arrived at my office to brief me on those details. Now, that resulting strategy document was so far off the mark of what the community wanted that it inspired mass meetings and petitions and the formation of long-standing groups that are still active that are now aimed at the protection of the character of the suburb of Sandgate and surrounding suburbs. Now, I've been consistent in my legitimate criticism of this approach that this LNP administration has taken to planning right across our city, but this for me was a clear example of that in my own backyard. Residents were concerned about increased density in locations that flood regularly along Brighton Road. I mean, these streets are about at sea level. We know that the car parking arrangements for the only new development that's happened in Sandgate over the last 10 or 20 or 30 years at the Aldi building is at street level, and the lift well, which only goes down a couple of metres, has a permanent pump running at all times. So how this administration was going to deal with increased density in an area that floods regularly and badly was beyond everyone. And that's where they proposed to put 6 stories in those locations. They've been scaled back to 4 stories now, the original height limit. But people remain rightly concerned about what any development in a neighbourhood plan area will mean when this LNP administration is starving our communities of funding for basic infrastructure. Now, people were concerned about what this development would mean for flooding. Well, they're concerned about what any development at the moment means for flooding in my community, because they know that this Lord Mayor won't even fund the repair of tidal devices that have been faulty for the last 3 years, that are inundating people's homes on monthly high tides as we speak. Now, the process wasn't comprehensive, inclusive or genuine. There was no real discussion about the objectives of neighbourhood planning with the community. In fact, the impression that people formed very quickly throughout this process was that they had to fight their way into the neighbourhood planning process. Residents had to fight to get their way into this process to ensure that council's plan that they released initially wasn't imposed upon them. Now, I'm not sure whether the Lord Mayor or the Chair of Planning, or there's been many chairs of planning over that time actually, spent much time talking directly to residents about their concerns. I do recall the Mayor coming to Sandgate, to the Sandgate Town Hall before the election. He was escorted and protected by police at that event. There was a lot of blame shifting there. He blamed the state government, he blamed me, but he showed no leadership to those people that were asking legitimate questions there. And that's what we've come to expect from his leadership and this administration. But when did he and when did the Chair of City Planning come to Sandgate to have a conversation with people about the need to plan for the future? We have serious issues about housing affordability. I've talked about that a lot, and supply, but we didn't get a genuine conversation about how that would be achieved locally and how we would get results in my community on that. Now, places that made sense, like the old gasworks site at the Sandgate train station and the Rainbow Street precinct, have been locked away now in this new plan from addressing this issue. And so the focus initially was on cramming 6 stories into places that flooded and places that weren't appropriate, and that sucked all the oxygen out of the ability to have a debate about the provision of affordable housing in other places. And I will put my money where my mouth is, Lord Mayor, and say that, say for instance, the old gasworks site is a site that council should buy, and then we should partner with the Brisbane Housing Company to deliver genuine, affordable and social housing with increased density. That's the kind of thing we should be having a conversation with the people of Sandgate about, instead of just blame shifting and doing a very lazy job, which you have. After community action, we saw that zoning on Brighton Road, as we've heard, retained at 4 stories and those 5 stories in Lagoon and Hancock Street, but that was entirely and completely back to front when you think about the process. So they pursued something, this administration pursued something that the community didn't want and didn't ask for, and then the planning team was forced to rewind and rework everything. And now we've heard, and they will have heard, that the chair of the City Planning Committee comes in here today and says that's not enough and they didn't do a good enough job, I presume, in working those things, and this administration didn't do a good enough job in consulting with people because he thinks it should be, the height should be increased and the density should be more. Now, neighbourhood planning is totally broken in Brisbane. It delivers bad outcomes, and that is a political problem because it's a system that this LNP administration has designed. None of this criticism is on the officers, the planning officers that have to go out and do this work in a system that is designed by this LNP administration. So I do want to thank those council officers for the work that they have done. It was a very, very difficult job in that.
You've got, Councillor Cassidy, your time has just about expired. Moving extension of time.
Thank you. Can I move?
Okay. We have motion for an extension of time from Councillor Cook and Councillor Cumming. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. So this was an opportunity. The Sandgate Neighbourhood Plan to plan for the next generation in and around Sandgate. But what we have now is a watered-down compromise on the original shambles that was proposed by this LNP administration. We are today, right now, better off not having gone through that 3 years for all this will achieve. The few small things that are worthy of support and that I do support in it, and that the planning team has worked very hard on, and I commend them for that, is increasing character protection on those new properties and the character overlay in the avenues of Sandgate, making sure that more of that coastal tin and timber is protected in the long term, while also providing the opportunity where it arises for some increased density as well, but that doesn't detract from the character of Sandgate. However, these can't be taken in isolation from the plan in its entirety, in the whole of its conception. So my position at the last election, well, it was a very clear one to the people of the Deagon Ward, was that this neighbourhood plan at that point and right now today should be scrapped, and we should start again. And we should fix those problems with neighbourhood planning and with town planning generally here in Brisbane, and give people a genuine say and have a genuine conversation with them about the future of their neighbourhood and the future of their city. So consistent with that approach, I won't be supporting this neighbourhood plan today because it was an absolutely flawed process that's produced a very bad outcome. And the Lord Mayor's never been there to meet people in the middle and provide that leadership that was needed for those people that wanted increased density for various reasons, for those people that didn't. He just let them fight it out in the community and showed no leadership on this, and instead sought to shift blame at every opportunity he could.
Point of
so
order.
I won't be supporting
Claims to be again misrepresented.
Okay, noted again.
So I won't be supporting this neighbourhood plan. It should be.
Councillors, please.
We should be redoing this and having this conversation genuinely with people and fixing neighbourhood planning once and for all. On clause B, the significant contracting plan for the construction of the new Everton Park Library, we'll be supporting this item today. I'd like to also put on record our thanks to the state government for funding the upgrade of the Bowls Club adjacent to this library, the $650,000 that is being contributed to that. That will greatly assist people's ability to use this library as well, because that includes a very large car park adjoining the Everton Park Bowls Club and the Everton Park Library. You know, the only time we see this administration, this LNP administration, get involved in community clubs and bowls clubs, usually to demolish them. So it's good to see that this one will be receiving an upgrade. I'd just like to ask that both those items be taken seriatim for voting, Chair.
Seriatim noted, thank you. Lord Mayor, your claims of misrepresentation.
Two points of misrepresentation. The first one, Councillor Cassidy claimed that I support the construction of housing at the racing facility. I didn't actually say that. I said it's state government-owned land, and it was an opportunity, if they were genuinely concerned about housing affordability and the provision of more housing, that you would think they would have a look at, but they didn't. So that's the first point. The second point was Councillor Cassidy claimed that I wasn't prepared to meet residents in the middle. Well, the old Sandgate plan had a maximum of 4 stories. It was proposed at 6 stories, and the maximum height is 5 stories. So we absolutely met residents in the middle.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Davis.
Well, thank you, Mr Chair, and I rise to speak on item B, the Stores Board submission, significant contracting plan for the construction of the new Everton Park Library. Mr Chair, I've spoken about our new library project a number of times here in the chamber, and there is great anticipation in our community for the new library, which has already commenced with early works, as the Lord Mayor has spoken about, in readiness for the construction of the new building. The existing library is a very well-loved space in the community. It is well used, and it has been servicing our local community for about 65 years. However, the last significant upgrade to the facility was in the 1990s, and as the library has reached, the end of its serviceable life, and as the Lord Mayor alluded to, it was time for the library to be shown a bit of love with an upgrade and become a more contemporary space with a growing community. The residents are very excited that the new library will provide the community with over double the current floor area, from 450 square metres to over 1,000 square metres, which means that there will be more space for community groups,
families and students to utilise and enjoy. And whilst today the submission before us is about the construction of the library building, we've ensured that an integrated approach has been taken to support a precinct upgrade. As the Lord Mayor mentioned, some elements of the new library will provide multi-purpose spaces and a meeting room. There will be a library collection space along with computer lounge with Wi-Fi seating to support technology access and digital inclusion. There will be a new car park underneath the library, and a new lift will provide accessibility right up to the library foyer. There will also be a children's space, and I know there's already much excitement for this dedicated space because it will allow for the expansion of the very popular children's program that is currently being delivered by library staff. Providing additional space and programs that support early literacy development, activities to learn and play, and of course encourage a lifelong love of reading, we know can play an important role in the development of our children. The new deck at the back of the library means we can also deliver outdoor activities for children, but it will also create a natural flow between the library, Fallon Park, Fallon Cottage and the Bowls Club, which will give this whole community precinct a more connected feel. Mr Chair, the precinct upgrade, anchored by a new library, is really just another example of the Shriner Council delivering in our suburbs. In addition to our $10.5 million library upgrade, we're also investing $500,000 into upgrading Fallon Park with a new playground. We've also secured $650,000 from the state government, which has been mentioned, to upgrade the driveway and car park for the neighbouring Everton Parks Bowls Club, which will share an access driveway with the new library. Fallon Cottage will still sit in the precinct, and this cottage was built in the 1880s by Joseph Pulteney, who went on to establish Pulteney Sawmill, which was a major employer in the Everton Park area for many, many years. And the design of the new library pays tribute to the history by incorporating wooden elements in the facade, including slanted beams. Mr Chair, I'm very excited to see this next step of the project unfolding, which will deliver a wonderful community facility out in the suburbs in Everton Park for local residents to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Further speakers? Councillor Sri.
Thanks, Chair. Rise to speak really briefly on the Sandgate neighbourhood plan, and just to reinforce the criticism that zoning for high density housing doesn't in and of itself improve housing affordability or indeed improve the supply of housing. And it's frustrating when debates in this chamber end up being so simplistic, and I heard the Mayor again repeating this mantra that, oh, if we want to make housing cheaper, we just have to rezone these sites for high density. But in fact, when you look at the economics of this stuff, if you take a couple of low density residential sites, for example, and rezone them for higher density, the first thing that does is push up land values quite significantly. That's a really big problem that this council isn't fully grappling with. Because if you rezone sites and suddenly the land gets more expensive, what happens? Some of those sites will be sold to developers, and maybe a few of those will get developed over the next few years. Some of those sites, though, will remain under the ownership of their current owners, and those poor owners are now paying much higher rates bills because their land valuations increased. And I've talked to pensioners in this position who are quite distressed when their land is rezoned for medium density or high density and suddenly their rates bill goes up. But for all those sites that are rezoned for high density development, if some of those are delivered with apartments or townhouses, the value of those new apartments and townhouses is shaped by the value of other nearby blocks of land that haven't yet been rezoned. So if the blocks of land on one side of the street are rezoned for high density development, but the blocks of the land on the other side of the street aren't rezoned, those blocks that aren't rezoned still experience a significant increase in land value because of the anticipated future development yield that they might see in down the track. So we have a problem where upzoning land for new development increases the land value of those sites, but it also drives up the land value of sites in the surrounding precinct, which in turn drives up the land value of any future medium density housing which is eventually delivered by private developers. So this patchy process of continually rezoning for high density development every few years, it might slightly increase the supply of private housing in a particular neighbourhood, but the very significant impact it puts in terms of upwards pressure on property values has the opposite effect. and in fact drives up the value of homes in the area, whether they're freestanding detached houses or medium density apartments and townhouses. So the council needs to recognise that simply using rezoning as a policy lever to address the housing crisis isn't going to cut it. We do need to be partnering with orgs like Brisbane Housing Company and with the state government to actually secure the delivery of public housing. Because if you leave this issue up to the private sector, you're not going to get cheaper housing. No one in the property industry wants private housing to become cheaper. No one in the property industry wants property values to fall. Have you ever talked to a developer who's like, oh yeah, I really want property values to collapse? Of course they don't. They want property values to keep rising, and they act accordingly by constricting supply, by drip feeding the release of properties onto the market when they are built. It's really naive of this council administration to pretend that what they're doing is supporting the provision of affordable housing, when actually, when you look at the realities on the ground and the practical impacts of this kind of unstrategic, patchy, ad hoc rezoning process that we're seeing across the city, is that it drives up land values but doesn't generate a significant increase in the supply of housing that is actually affordable for people on low incomes. It would be much better to buy up these sites and bring them into public ownership before you rezoned them. Because once you rezone them, they get way too expensive to deliver public housing on anyway. So I think it's a bit disappointing to see, once again, this debate has become so simplistic and shallow and completely detached from evidence on the ground. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and I rise to speak on item A as one of those many city planning chairs, as Councillor Cassidy said, that oversaw this neighbourhood plan as we worked through this process over the last 3, maybe 4 years. And to listen to Councillor Cassidy's rewrite of history, you would think he was, oh, the poor woe is me, very hard-working local councillor who tried hard to communicate with my community about the need for change and the need for housing diversity in the Sandgate area to make sure we had supply for those who want to stay in the area as they move out of their family homes. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. That is not what we got from the get-go, I can assure you. The Sandgate Neighbourhood Plan actually was instigated at the request from Councillor Cassidy and the Chamber of Commerce. So, ironically, Councillor Cassidy said it should be scrapped and go back to the start. It was he who asked for it in the very first place. The existing neighbourhood plan had been in place since 2000. The council worked with the local community to develop the draft strategy for feedback. You need a draft to go out to have comment. Now, not everybody loves the first draft. I was a teacher. I never liked the first drafts as anything that most of the kids handed in for me, but that's the whole point. You put out a draft, you start the conversation. And the conversation was definitely started. There were 3 themes: enhance the local character, and we did get there, 170 new properties on the list and 10 new local heritage sites. Provide more housing opportunities. Now, we've never said that we are out there to build social housing. So the Lord Mayor said here today very clearly that is not council's role. Our role is to make sure that the neighbourhood plans and any amendments we bring to city planning allows for housing diversity. Housing diversity. Homes. Homes don't need to be a 3-bedroom white picket fence with a garage anymore. They can be a 1-bedroom apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. It's housing diversity, and that's what we were looking for in Sandgate. A beautiful heritage suburb with gorgeous natural environment and open space, but very much locked up to large, beautiful Queenslanders with families who have lived there for decades, with nowhere for younger people to live, to buy, to step into the market. And it was housing diversity. Of course, the Chamber of Commerce, as I said, asked for this as well because they wanted those feet on the street. They wanted that housing diversity so the young people would buy. They'd come in, young families who could afford to buy in a 1- or 2-bedroom apartment. There's beautiful parks through Sandgate and the beach. They didn't need the backyard. They wanted to live in an apartment and have that opportunity on top of the shops, a beautiful Sandgate local business district, and supporting the local businesses. And that's what the draft proposed. Increasing the long-standing 4 stories to 6 stories, and reasonable around the district centres, the gaswork areas and around the train stations very early with Deagon as well. What we have seen in neighbourhood planning across the city for decades. Neighbourhood planning has fared us very well But when it doesn't fare us well is when we have those on the opposite side of the chamber coming out with political campaigns who don't care about their community. They don't care about the rest of Brisbane. All they care about is hitting the administration for opposition's sake. I know neighbourhood plans are not easy. You need to take a teaspoon of cement. But I've had two. And one of mine in Upper Mount Gravatt went to 15 stories and 10 stories. And the change was scary, but we worked through the process. And even the Historical Society understand the need for that growth. And then we had the Cooperoo District's neighbourhood plan, which had a lot of heritage, as much as they have up in Sandgate across that very large area. And I had a shopping precinct exactly the same, which was 4 stories that went to 6 stories, with some character in those shops as well. And the community were, look, oh, we're not quite sure. We don't think we want to see the Towers of Terror. I'm like, 6 stories is not a Tower of Terror. It's not what you see much different from the ground from 4 stories to what you see to 6 stories. But the reality is, if you're concerned about car parking, if you build a 6-storey apartment, it makes it livable and makes it workable to build car parking underneath as well, to provide for the local businesses. So it's about taking the community on the journey. Did we see that from the local councillor? Absolutely not. He took them on the journey of his political campaign leading into 2020. And we hear about the organised grassroots campaign. Yes, well, by Labor now is my suggestions. Yes, the community didn't like some of the suggestions, but it was the way it was delivered. And it could have been explained and we could have worked with the community, but there was no way in Hades that Councillor Cassidy wanted to work with this administration for a great outcome. And it's interesting right now that he wants to scrap it all, but he still hasn't given us any idea of what the solution is. I wrote down, there's 3 things I like. There's the character overlay. Crickets. And then we went to, let's scrap it and start it again. So he didn't give us 3 things he liked. He gave us 1 thing he liked, but he didn't give us and never has given us the alternative. It even led to an election commitment where the Lord Mayoral candidate at the time said he would tear up every single neighbourhood plan and start from scratch in the entire city. Well, where is he now, and where is Councillor Cassidy now, and where is his suggestions? What is his suggestions? Become a leader, Lord Mayor. Well, that's what we are on this side of the chamber, and that's why we brought forward this amendment today. And there is some missed opportunities, unfortunately, I believe. Councillor Cassidy believes the Chamber of Commerce wasn't heard. Well, it wasn't heard by Councillor Cassidy until after the election, I can assure you. And yes, I was out there as City Planning Chair, speaking to the Chamber of Commerce and speaking to the locals.
Which locals? Councillor Cassidy, please.
Oh, as opposed to, can I take the interjection from Councillor Cassidy that I only spoke to LNP members? I'd like to know how many LNP members he spoke to. Ian Cassidy, Councillor Cassidy.
Councillors,
please. Have here,
Councillor Cassidy, please.
I didn't think...
Councillor Cassidy, don't make me go to the formals, please.
I didn't think he'd wait out the back very much longer. Because he is a fence sitter, so he's in here again sitting on his fence, because until this day, right now, this is the first time in 3 years we've heard anything from Councillor Cassidy on what he thinks. No feedback, no submission. No, I've got the notes from his last...
Point of order to you, Councillor Cassidy.
You claim to be misrepresented.
Okay, noted.
His last report on what he said to Council was, well, we'll send it to interest. I certainly continue to constructively participate, I beg to differ, but I will reserve further comment on the item until it comes to Council post-consultation. Well, he's reserved further comment a long, long time on this one. It is clear he likes to play politics in projects like this. He wants to take all the feedback on board, but then never gives us his actual ideas on what to do. Councillor Cassidy did not bring the community together on this one. He divided. And I'm sure in his mind he feels like he has conquered as well. But he didn't bother to give in a submission. His long social media post in May talked about the power of working together and the power of the community. But unfortunately, the power of the local councillor to put forward his ideas on what would be a great outcome was sorely missing in this debate. pardon the pun. This is going forward to the state government now for amendment. I do understand that the Deagon Racecourse, as the Lord Mayor mentioned, is something that the state government is looking at, but that will be under a master plan in DA. This is the change that the community has accepted with many consultation that was come in. But there was missed opportunity around the Deagon train station when every other train station has seen increase of development around it. And I do believe the Chamber of Commerce would have liked to have seen some more, but we did meet halfway. We did listen to the people. We didn't listen to Councillor Cassidy because there was nothing to be heard from Councillor Cassidy. And we did meet them halfway, and I recommend the report to the Chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy, your misrepresentation.
Thanks very much, Chair. From the outset, I have put my comments on record in this place and publicly and consistently to officers from planning who came and briefed me, and I gave feedback to them, and I assumed they took that feedback formally into the process, but I suspect Councillor Adams is
not an opportunity for debate.
Is just ignoring all that feedback I gave formally through council.
Thank you. Further speakers? Any further speakers? Councillor Allen. Oh, sorry, Councillor Howard.
I was just waiting to see if someone from the other side. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to enter the debate on item B, the Stores Board submission for the significant contracting plan for the construction of the new Everton Park Library. And I'd just like to add my comments to the Lord Mayor and to Councillor Davis, who I know has been a great advocate for this item and also is working with her community to make sure that we have a very good outcome. So item B is seeking Council's approval to put out the tender for the construction of the new Everton Park Library on the grounds of the existing site. And further to the comments by both speakers before, I rise to support this submission. It is very difficult when people are speaking through you, Mr. Chair. No, on both sides.
Councillor Howard, please. Councillor Cumming, please. No need to be interrupting. Councillor Howard.
Thank you. Libraries play a very important role within our communities as cultural and learning hubs, and I'm exceptionally proud to oversee Council's 33 libraries in my capacity as Civic Cabinet Chair for Community, Arts and Nighttime Economy. Our modern and vibrant libraries continue to deliver for the residents of Brisbane, providing residents with access to a network of more than 1.7 million items and more than 9,000 library events and outreach programs delivered each year. The Everton Park Library opened in its current location at 561 South Pine Road in 1965, with the last major refurbishment, as Councillor Davis said, being completed in 93-94. It's a well-loved community library, attracting around 35,000 visitors each and every year. And further to the statements made previously, the new and expanded Everton Park Library will more than double the current library floor space, increasing from 454 square metres to about 1,000 square metres. This upgrade will truly transform the experience for the local residents who use the Everton Park Library, with new learning and leisure spaces, giving the residents of Everton Park more to see and do in Brisbane. I'm really looking forward to following this project as it progresses, as I know the new upgraded Everton Park Library will really be something special, and I commend the item to the Chamber.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to speak on item A, and certainly there's been a fair bit of debate on this already, and I won't touch upon the history of the Sandgate Neighbourhood plan in particular. Lord Mayor and Councillor Adams have covered that pretty fulsomely, but I must say I was more than a little bit surprised to hear that Councillor Cassidy, the councillor who didn't put a submission in on this neighbourhood plan, says it should be scrapped because there was inadequate community consultation. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of what consultation did occur. So at the beginning of the process, we had an online survey and there were 538 responses. We had an interactive mapping tool where there were 213 responses. We held 3 community planning team meetings. We held 2 information kiosks, which were attended by 350 residents. We had 3 talk to a planner sessions, which were attended by more than 70 residents. In terms of the draft strategy, which I might add, we're not required to do under the State Planning Act, but which we do in order to provide early visibility to what we're proposing and which allows the community to engage and provide feedback. Do you know how many responses we got to that particular piece of consultation? Listening to Councillor Cassidy, you'd think is what, 1, 2, 5, 10? 700 submissions were received from the community on the draft strategy. None from the local councillor, of course, and still none. So, after the draft strategy was done, we put together a draft plan. And how many submissions were received on that? Just a couple? 10, 20? No, 228 submissions. So, there has been significant community consultation on this plan to date. It's the way the neighbourhood planning process is structured, and it provides multiple points and multiple mediums for residents to provide input. So this notion that it should be scrapped because there was inadequate community consultation is demonstrably wrong. Now, I thought it was the height of hypocrisy for Councillor Cassidy to get up in this chamber and make some of the statements he made. He complains about this neighbourhood plan, but has not been prepared to put in a submission of his own to articulate what he wanted to see. He's got up in this chamber in recent times and talked about government housing and affordable housing to alleviate the housing crisis, but when it came to doing something in his own ward, he did nothing. When there was a chance for him to do something, he was missing in action. He did not make a submission. He did not pass on the views.
Will Councillor Allen take a quick question?
Not at the moment. He did not pass on his own views, and he did not represent his ward. He did not support additional housing supply or affordable housing or government housing. Councillor Cassidy did not support different types of housing so that older residents could age in place. He did not support changes that would provide more economic activity, particularly in Sandgate Village. Councillor Cassidy did nothing. As we all know, he says one thing in the chamber and does something else outside. When the people of Deagon Ward have concerns about housing availability, housing affordability and economic activity, they should turn to Councillor Cassidy and ask, why did you do nothing? Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No further speakers. We now, Lord Mayor not here to sum up, we now move to the vote on item A. This has been moved in seriatim. Move to the vote first on item A. All in favour of item A, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Cook and seconded by Councillor Cumming. Ayes to the right, noes to the left, please. Clerks, please ring the bells. Got to be a keep cup, Jared. Got to be a keep cup. That's all right, that's done. Oh, for having state parliament, it's not a bad idea. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Another. Oh, it is good. Councillor Abbott. Okay. Clerks, please read the results.
Mr Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 18 in favour and 6 against.
Thank you. Councillors, please resume your seats. We move to the vote on item B. Item B in the ENC report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. The ayes have it. Deputy Mayor, Economic Development and Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move that the report of the Economic Development and Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
It has been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the report of the Economic Development and the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee meeting dated Tuesday 31 May 2022 be adopted. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Before I get to last week's report, I just want to talk a little bit about the business hub and opportunities again this week. Last night we had the wrap-up of the Local Business Partnership Initiative at Mount Gravatt Central, and it was very interesting to hear from the businesses that have taken the opportunities for the one-on-one and the mentoring programs over the last 15 months as we've been working with the Mount Gravatt Central for their experiences and how much they have truly enjoyed the opportunity to expand their skills, which is why I again reach out to councillors to make sure that they're sharing with their local businesses the opportunities at the business hub in town, at the Nunda, the north side at Nunda, at the village there as well, where the suburban business hub is, but right across the city in different places, libraries and things like that that can be found on the website. What I clearly heard was when small businesses are so busy with their heads down and their bums up that they are forgetting about how they actually can get a digital presence out there on social media platforms. And that was what the Mount Gravatt Local Business Partnership Initiative eventually came to the agreement through the establishment of their sub-chamber through the Mount Gravatt Central now, is a social media platform that they all contribute to get an identity in Mount Gravatt Central. But a lot of the businesses were still really lacking in that whole content-making ability, how to take good photos of their businesses that look good on Instagram and look good on Facebook. So if you have those businesses that you know in your local area could really do with a bit of zhuzh on their social media platforms, please get them in contact with our business liaison officers or through the business hubs to make sure they can take an opportunity with the workshops that are coming up over the next few months. Last week we were talking about an economy that's getting a lot of zhuzhing over COVID, and that is Brisbane's maker economy, and it's definitely growing in Brisbane, particularly as we've had some unprecedented lockdowns. People have been at home and have been very, very creative in some of their entrepreneurial ways that they are discovering their inner artisan, and we have been supporting that through our economic development team in council and making sure we can grow their ability to get out to the wider community as well. We've had a maker entrepreneurship program, create and connect conference sponsorship and maker focused workshops that are all about showcasing our Brisbane makers and helping them get out into those many markets that we have right across the city, or even into some of our shops like Museum of Brisbane and those type of areas as well. So we had 15 makers that are currently undertaking the training program in 21 and 22 over a 20-week program. It's all about the skills they need to develop their business. They may be very, very creative, but sometimes creativity is not enough to make sure you can create an emerging business as well. So it's about making sure they have those skills, those tools, that financial knowledge, and we support them through that. We saw some fantastic, beautiful work that I would love to have half that amount of talent in my smallest finger, but I don't. But I am glad to see the enthusiasm of the 15 that were involved, the alumni that they got together with, and we look forward to supporting more going through the future in this fantastic program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No further speakers. We now put this motion for the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Landers.
Mr Chair, I move that council now adjourn for afternoon tea for 15 minutes, which commences only when all councillors have vacated the chamber and the doors have been locked.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the meeting adjourn for a period of 15 minutes for an afternoon tea break and commences when councillors have vacated the chamber. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Murphy, Transport Committee report, please.
Chair, I move that the report of the Transport Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Murphy and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the report of the Transport Committee meeting dated Tuesday 31 May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Last week in the Transport Committee, our presentation was on Council's event, transport and planning services. There are approximately 100 events each year that are serviced by Transport for Brisbane's event buses across a number of venues that include Suncorp Stadium, the Gabba and Nissan Arena, just to name a few. With events regularly exceeding 40 or 50,000 patrons, there is no question that organising these services is a very significant logistical challenge for our city. Our teams work in tandem with traffic management and venues to ensure that patrons get to and from home as safely and as quickly as possible. The success of recent events like Magic Round show how vital TFB's transport services are to major attractions in our city. That's why, Chair, projects like Brisbane Metro are so important in the lead up to the 2032 Olympics. Mr. Chair, during the presentation I made the remark that Brisbane has such great respect for our bus drivers, and I believe part of that comes from the event services that they provide. Anyone who has caught a bus to or from a big game or concert in the city knows that the event buses are run extremely well by our Transport for Brisbane team. They help to make a fun day out even more memorable. And my thanks, Chair, goes out to not only the bus operators, but the planning team, the event scheduling team, and all the marshals, many of which are casual employees, students, part-time workers, etc., that just love to do it because it's a few extra bucks in the back pocket and they get to give back to their city in the same way. So I just wanted to thank all of the event planning and services team within Transport for Brisbane for the great work that they do, and I'm sure the committee would join me in thanking them. Chair, also I'd like to acknowledge a significant milestone in the city's flood recovery with the reopening of the Toombul bus interchange yesterday. Almost every type of council asset was impacted by the flood, including some bus stops and interchanges, and of course Toombul Shopping Centre itself was heavily damaged by the flood. The closure of Toombul Shopping Centre is a big loss for many residents, and the bus interchange is a key public transport hub for the community, with 13 north side routes plus school services stopping at this location. The flood left the site with no power, meaning we couldn't operate lighting, facilities or ticketing at the interchange, and access paths into and out of the interchange were blocked due to construction work and the demolition of the site. Locals will know that we moved to create temporary bus stops on Grace Street as soon as possible after the flood to ensure services could continue. However, the temporary bus stop was not ideal for residents wanting to catch the bus or other motorists in the area. And I know Councillor Allen has been a strong advocate for access and for the future of the interchange since the flood. He's been working very closely with Mirvac to effect a great outcome, and on Monday, Chair, we got that outcome for both commuters, drivers and local residents. So I want to thank particularly Councillor Allen for his advocacy and for Mirvac for their active collaboration and support, which allowed us to reach an outcome which ensures residents have safe and easy access onto public transport. I'd also like to thank our officers in both TPO and Transport for Brisbane who worked closely together to ensure that infrastructure was prepared ahead of the reopening yesterday, and that the change was successful for both our drivers and commuters. And I want to give it a special shout out to Tanya Orr, the new head of TPO, who has done a stellar job working on this particular issue with Mirvac and with Councillor Allen. In more good news, Chair, last week I was very proud to accept an international award for the Brisbane Metro, presented by the International Union of Public Transport, the UITP. The UITP Awards are one of the most prestigious public transport awards, showcasing innovative projects in cities and regions across the globe.
The projects showcase the very best in public transport, and there are 8 award categories ranging from diversity and inclusion to multimodal integration and public and urban transport strategy. UITP assembles an impartial expert jury that scores the submitted projects based on their innovation, their contribution and their transferability, meaning their transferability to be used in other cities. So it was extremely exciting to see the Brisbane Metro being awarded a special recognition award in the operational and technological excellence category. I joined with Asia Pacific Regions Awards ceremony last week virtually via Zoom to accept the award, which I'm very proud. I'll present that to the Metro team later this week on behalf of the committee. Brisbane Metro was commended for innovative use of digital engineering. The Metro project combines all of its project data from geographic models to survey and asset data into a unified interface to be used as part of the project delivery and operational tasks. From this, we are able to produce reports and 3D models that are not only useful for project design and delivery, but also for engaging with external partners and the community. And I can't stress to you, Chair, just how important it has been for us to have that digital collaboration ability during COVID to be able to progress critical design packages for Brisbane Metro, not only on the vehicle and the infrastructure, but also on the network design, which we were talking about in committee just this morning. I'd also like to point out, Mr Chair, that while we didn't take away the major prize, the overall winner in our category was the Nantes Metropole, which uses the very same Hess Light Tram 25 model as our Brisbane Metro vehicle. The Nantes project was awarded for service quality, for operational performance and ecological transition, benefits which I know we can all expect from our own Metro project once services commence in 2024. And I will leave debate to the Chamber. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further speakers? Any further speakers? Thank you. We'll now move to the vote on this motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Wines, Infrastructure Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move the report of the Infrastructure Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 31st of May 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Wines and seconded by Councillor Matic that the report of the Infrastructure Committee meeting dated Tuesday, 31 May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Wines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. The committee saw a presentation about the recently opened Gresham Street Bridge. It was so up-to-date and contemporary that the bridge had literally opened the day before the presentation. And it is, we had on the Friday before the motor vehicles were allowed to cross and the traffic lights were turned on, which were turned on at roughly 4:30 a.m. on Monday morning. We had the first vehicles cross at lunchtime on Friday, which was of course 6 cardboard cars made by the daycare that was immediately next door to the bridge, who have been patient, whose daycare system and the children there had been patient throughout construction. So we thought we'd make a special opportunity for them to come and visit the site early, which they all clearly really enjoyed. So thank you. Thank you to the daycare next to the bridge, and I hope you really enjoyed that opportunity. And it was great to have the local residents deeply involved in sort of working with us on this project. The project was a little bit late because we lost about 3 weeks to the flood, because as a bridge over a water body over Enoggera Creek, the body of the bridge itself was submerged, and the columns of the span had yet to be completely secured as they would normally have been at the completion of the project. The huge volume of water that went through at that time did delay the conclusion of the project by 3 weeks. Now, considering the scale of the event, the nature of the work, I believe 3 weeks is a pretty remarkable amount of time lost in how few weeks were lost for what could have been a catastrophic event on that particular bridge. Councillors may also be interested to know that while we were reconstructing this bridge, we had built a temporary bridge on the other side and had left the principal sewer for the community there, had relied on the bridge for protection from high volumes of water, but it did the sewer also survived. And for further information, the sewer line will also be upgraded now, at the conclusion of the project, by Urban Utilities. The Gresham Street Bridge services the St John's Wood community, a locality inside Ashgrove with about 300 properties, and was constructed roughly 100 years ago. As a result of its age, we had weight limits on the bridge, and it had become necessary. It was one of the few final wooden bridges left in the city that would yet to convert to concrete and steel. And the objective of that conversion is to make them resilient to large-scale disasters such as the ones that were experienced. The project had 5 objectives, and they were to remove the existing timber bridge and construct the new bridge, improving safety and amenity and bridge longevity, to upgrade crossing vehicular loads up to 42.5 tonnes, to improve flood immunity of crossing to greater than 5% annual exceedance probability, to improve pedestrian and cycling access, and to improve safety for Gresham Street and Waterworks Road intersections for all road users. So the temporary bridge was constructed to the east of the existing bridge and was in many ways viewed favourably, and in fact some residents in the lead-up asked us why didn't we just keep the temporary bridge, because it was pretty good. And then we had a flood that came through, and they reconsidered and thought maybe a permanent steel and concrete bridge probably was the way to go. So there was some interesting facts from the site. There was a 1 metre band of unfractured quartz which was encountered at one pile, and the piling drill at that northern abutment took 1 week of constant drilling to break through that quartz. And so if you consider 1 week of constant drilling to break through the quartz, one of the reasons we would have created a great deal of noise, and one of the reasons we were so appreciative to both the daycare and the local residents for their patience through this location. So that was it's a really good example of what can be done. We thank the federal government, the Australian government, for a financial contribution to assist us in completing that project. There is a petition that was presented. I will leave further comments to the chamber.
Thank you. Further speakers? Any further speakers? Councillor Toomey, there's a surprise.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you. I have to admit, Mr Chair, that the Gresham Street Bridge is one of those projects that almost had everything. We had power, we had civil construction, we had water mains, we had gas, and now, thank you, Mr Chair, we've got a sewerage pipe replacement coming. So now it ticks off all the boxes. It's a fantastic project for my community and for St John's Wood. I do want to recant the opening of the Gresham Street Bridge by the Woods Early Education Centre. Mr Deputy Chair, we had the young kids carry their little cars across, but what was really special, apart from having the kids there, was that we had a traffic controller. And I dare say that this young gentleman, who was the traffic controller for the cars on the bridge, must have spent hours watching people move across that bridge. He had us stopping and starting like you would not believe. We'd go 3 metres, then we'd have to stop, then we'd have to turn around, then we'd have to go back. It was so much fun being out there with the kids and knowing that they were the ones who were there to share in the opening and celebrating the opening of the bridge. Mr Deputy Chair, Mr Chair, I also want to thank the business community that was around Gresham Street Bridge. I do know that a lot of the workers who were on that project, whether they were UU, Energex, our contractors, council officers, they were frequenting the businesses nearby, and I do appreciate their patronage for the local coffee shop. Benetton's, it's a French patisserie. If anybody's out that way, it's a great coffee shop, and I even took the Lord Mayor the other day just to make sure that the pretzels were up to standard. So I really want to thank my community. I want to thank the business community around Gresham Street Bridge. I want to thank the residents. I'd like to thank the Chair of Infrastructure, Councillor Wines. I'd like to thank the Lord Mayor for bringing the project forward, but most of all, I'd like to thank the kids of the Woods Early Learning Centre for opening the bridge and making it such a fun project to be involved in. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Wines? We now move to the vote on this motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Allen, City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee report, please.
Mr Chair, I move that the report of the City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted.
Second that.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor Hammond that the report of the City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee meeting dated Tuesday 31 May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Before moving to the committee report, I did want to just touch upon a point that Councillor Sri made a little bit earlier. He, on a number of occasions, suggested that the administration was kind of naive around the impacts of zoning and particularly the impact on housing affordability. But you know, looking at the zoning alone in terms of affordability is a very narrow perspective. I think that you know, you need to look at the other contributors to affordability, such as construction costs. Obviously, councils are faced with these challenges at the moment where material costs are up, supply chain issues are impacting construction cost, as is the availability of labour. Interest rates are also a factor in affordability, and as we've seen today, the Reserve Bank has lifted interest rates by 50 basis points. Other factors that impact affordability are tax policy, wage relativities, and inflation and the cost of living. So there are a lot of factors that impact affordability, and most of them are outside of council's control. So I just wanted to make that point to ensure that when you're talking about affordability, the full breadth of the impacts are considered rather than focusing in on one narrow element. In terms of the committee report last week, we had a presentation on the Paddington Terraces Village Precinct project, Deputy Chair, in your ward. The project as it stands today was completed in 2 stages. The first stage was completed under the Paddington Grant funded partnership and commenced in December 2019. This stage of the project included energy efficient bud lighting to 32 trees along Given Terrace and Latrobe Terrace. Additionally, it included a placemaking entry sign to the terraces, 3 distinctive mural artworks and Gobo artworks projections onto 2 heritage buildings. The project was completed in late 2020 with the hosting of the Terraces Night Market. The second stage of this particular project was the Paddington Village Precinct project, which commenced in 2021, and this was primarily to deliver additional placemaking improvements. These improvements included 2 new benches, a drinking fountain, and most importantly, 16 cooker locations. Now, the 16 kookaburra, or cooker locations as we've referred to them, feature kookaburra moulds that have been brightly painted, and these are placed at locations along the terraces. Each have been individually painted by different artists, and honestly, they look terrific. They're very, very colourful, and they're certainly eye-catching, and I believe have become a bit of an Instagram opportunity for young people up there. So this project was completed just last month in May 2022, and I'll leave further debate to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Any further debate? No debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillor Davis, Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Deputy Chair, I move that the report of the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee meeting of Tuesday 31 May 2022 be adopted.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Mackay, that the report of the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee meeting dated Tuesday 31st of May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Davis. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Before I get to the committee report, last week in Chambers, Councillor Johnson asked for the list of suburbs that the Brisbane Carbon Challenge champion households resided in. As I mentioned last week, this program was open to anyone, and applicants were required to meet program eligibility and assessed against the selection criteria. Selection of households was not solely based on spatial representation rather than a good cross-section of household types. I can provide the Chamber with the following information. Of the 18 households, Councillor Johnson, you'll be pleased to note that 2 were in the Tennyson ward in the suburbs of Chelmer and Graceville. The remaining households were in the suburbs of Barden, Bridgeman Downs, Carindale, Chermside West, Cooperoo, Geebung, Hawthorne, Jindalee Kedron, Kenmore Lota, McDowell, Nunda, Spring Hill and Zilmere. Mr Deputy Chair, item A is last week's committee presentation, which was on how Council protects our natural assets through invasive species management, with a focus on keeping Moreton Island, Magumpan, cane toad free. The cane toad is a native of Central and South America and were introduced into Australia in 1935 when approximately 100 toads were imported to help control the sugarcane pests. They've been present in Brisbane since the 1940s and now cover over half of Queensland. As cane toads have a low salinity tolerance level, they are only able to travel to Moreton Island, Mulgumban via humans visiting the island or when transporting materials. And that's why it's important for Council to work with our key stakeholders to continue the cane toad detection campaign for the island. A highlight of the program is the cane toad detection dogs that are deployed to sniff out cane toads who may have made their way across to the island. In addition to the detection dogs, environmental DNA testing is used to detect whether cane toads are present in the waterways. Since testing has commenced, all return samples have shown negative results, scientifically validating the claim that Moreton Island Mulgumpan is cane toad free. However, each time a vehicle, trailer, camping equipment, plants, mulch or building materials are transported to the island, there is a risk of reintroduction. Another strategy to ensure visitors to the island are aware of this risk, the installation of signage at the barge car park to not only increase awareness of the cane toad free status, but to encourage visitors to check their belongings. Council is also supporting strategies to manage the impact of cane toads on the mainland through exploration into new trapping technologies that can effectively lure cane toads in numbers not previously achieved. While we await the availability of this technology, Council has also purchased standard cane toad traps for use by our creek catchment groups. The committee was also treated to a pop quiz at the end of the meeting to test out who knew the sounds of particular species, including some various frog types, the cane toad and even a koala. And I'm pleased to note that the councillors who undertook that pop quiz did extraordinarily well. Mr Chair, these are just a small sample of how the Shriner Council is managing invasive animals to ensure the long-term protection of our natural environment and biodiversity, and I'll leave further debate to the Chamber. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Any debate? No debate. All those, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillor Toomey, City Standards Committee.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I move the report of the City Standards Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted.
Seconded. Moved by Councillor Toomey, seconded by Councillor Landers, that the report of the City Standards Committee meeting dated Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. Last week's committee presentation was on Council's Waste Smart education programs, where we engage with kindies and schools and provide them resources that they can use within their own communities about reducing waste within kindies and schools. As we all know, Council's dedicated to reducing the amount of waste sent to landfill to help keep Brisbane clean, green and sustainable. And I'm pleased to say that in our report we learnt of some very, very successful kindies that have managed to do that, that have been able to reduce the amount of fill coming from their kindies getting into our waste stream. One of those was in Councillor Johnson's ward, and quite a success story from what I hear. Mr Deputy Chair, as part of the program, some of the kindy teachers are able to recover some CBD points, which also makes the program a lot more attractive to implement. It also engages with young kids in primary schools around which waste stream and which product goes where. It teaches these behaviours quite early. This is done with the ambition that these kids will actually take these habits home and then reinforce them in their everyday lives. Mr Chairman, we also had a petition requesting that Council remove a trailer permanently parked on the street in Clayfield, and that was about it. I'll leave the rest to the Chamber for debate.
Thank you. Councillor Toomey, is there any debate? No debate. All those in favour, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillor Howard, Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I move that the report of the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted.
Seconded. Moved by Councillor Howard, seconded by Councillor Landers, that the report of the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee meeting dated Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. And of course, before moving to the report, I know that you will all be wanting to know what's been happening in Brisbane over the last week. And I can tell you a lot, especially at night time. Councillor Cumming, I will take that interjection. Last week, I joined with Minister Enoch to help launch the Brisbane Festival, which will be, of course, happening right here in Brisbane during the month of September. Again, it's an amazing opportunity for all of the residents of Brisbane to enjoy everything that Brisbane has to offer. I also attended the Finders Keepers Creative Business Summit at the Old Museum, and I'd just like to congratulate Sarah Thornton and Brooke Johnson, who have been running Finders Keepers for more than 14 years. It was a great opportunity for some of their clients to come together and to learn a little bit about some of the intricacies of running a business, and it was a very interesting day, and everyone was having a great time learning a lot about how to run a small business. I also attended the Queensland Youth Music Awards at St Peter's Lutheran Church, Councillor Mackay, in your wonderful ward, and I really want to thank the Voices of Birraleigh. They have run this awards now for a number of years, and it's a fantastic opportunity for schools to participate in these music awards. I just have to say that the St Peter's Hall was incredible. It was packed with parents and grandparents and families all coming to hear the children, and they all performed beautifully, and it was wonderful to be able to help present some of the awards on that night. We also had on last Friday was Mabo Day, and there was a commemoration at the Holy Trinity Church in Fortitude Valley, and I know that there were a lot of Mabo events around Brisbane, but I just want to say to Father Rodney and to Auntie Rosie, who organised the Torres Strait Islander event there at Holy Trinity, what a great afternoon it was. I had to leave just as the dancing was starting, but can I just say that Father Rodney holds that they actually have Torres Strait Islander services that are held every fortnight at Holy Trinity, and so again a wonderful display of what Brisbane has to offer with our multicultural communities. So Friday night also saw the hills coming alive with the sound of music, and that's Bowen Hills, not sort of Austria or wherever it was, because the Queensland Musical Theatre performed at 12th Night Theatre up at Bowen Hills, and again, you know, this is a community theatre. I'm proud to be their patron, and every event just gets better and better, and I have to say that they are truly grateful to the 12th Night Theatre for hosting them. It's very difficult for community theatres, community organisations to find those theatres around Brisbane, but I truly believe that the 12th Night Theatre is one of those combinations that just works beautifully. So if you're looking for something to do, there are still a few more tickets left, and I think it will finish this weekend, but please support our local community theatres. Sunday, I was representing the Lord Mayor at the Platinum Jubilee and Thanksgiving service at St John's Cathedral, and I think that we should put on record our thanks to the Queen for the most amazing 70 years of service, and it was a beautiful service and wonderful to see so many people there. The Governor was there supporting the Queen, and I guess just a little bit of celebration for Brisbane to combine with what happens in the UK. And then finally last night I attended the Queensland Day dinner with the Royal Historical Society of Queensland. These events are always interesting and I always learn something new, which of course I did last night, and I really want to thank the Royal Historical Society for all of the work they do in making sure that we all understand our history within Brisbane. Now, it's been a long time since I've talked about DZ death rays, and I didn't want you to think that I had forgotten them. And so, and I actually had someone asking me about them just earlier today, so I took the time to go online and to work out what Shane, Simon and Lachlan are up to, and they're currently touring Victoria, so they'll be pretty cold, but they know how to dance and sing up a storm, so I think that they'll be fine. But they are coming back to Queensland for Saturday the 18th of June at Maroochydore, for those of you who'd like to get along and support one of my favourite bands. Moving to the committee report. Well, I think everybody else actually quite likes hearing what's going on in Brisbane. Is that right, guys? Okay, that's good. Thank you. I'm sorry, through you. Yeah. Oh, my favourite song. No, I thought, I don't know. They've got a new one out, something about live the nerve or something like that. But anyway, I'll come back to you next week, Councillor Cassidy, on that one. And can I say that I have seen Councillor Cassidy at the Fortitude Music Hall on many an occasion, and I know that he enjoys the nighttime economy as much as I do in our beautiful Fortitude Valley.
Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Otherwise, Councillor Shree might ask another question that I might get into trouble. So, yeah. Okay, moving to the committee presentation, because I know. Can I just say, our officers, our community development officers, do the most amazing job. We had last week we had a presentation on building thriving communities through community development, and I often think that there is so much that we do in council that we sometimes don't get to understand some of the things that have been happening in this council for a very long time. And so our council's community development team works with our community organisations and residents to promote equality and social justice, empowerment, collective actions and resilient communities. They're internationally recognised by the United Nations, the World Health Organisation and the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. We work with multicultural communities, youth, refugees and asylum seekers, older people, LGBTIQ+ communities, and the presentation last week by our Manager for Connected Communities was again an opportunity for us just to learn a little bit more about what we do. So can I encourage all of you to reach out to your community development coordinators to talk to them about what's happening in your area. We also have the council's youth development team, and they're also very active in a number of areas with our youth across Brisbane. But our coordinators work in partnership with those groups and communities to implement our inclusive and accessible community development activities in the local areas. And I just really want to say, through you, Mr Chair, a big thank you to all of the officers that are involved in these programs, because they mean a great deal to our community, and I recommend it to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Any debate? Councillor Johnston?
Yes, I rise to speak on the presentation before us today. Firstly, I'm glad from Councillor Howard's point of view that this community development process seems to be going well in the city. Unfortunately, that's not what I'm experiencing out in my ward, and I think there is a big disconnect between perhaps what happens in LNP wards and what's happening elsewhere, or simply that Councillor Howard is unaware of what's going on in the ground in wards she has no contact with. Firstly, I'd like to start by saying that a person who did work with community organisations in our wards was Donna Bowe. and she'd worked for council for a long time and was an integral part of many community organisations and events. She's left council. Not a peep from this council about why. I don't believe anybody stood up in here and thanked her for her service or said what's happening. The first we heard about this person who was our contact going was that a new lady contacted us and said, "Hi, I'm the new ex." We contacted her well over a month ago and asked to meet with her, and we've had no reply. So my staff are currently chasing her up. But this is simply to meet with the person who is the new Donna Bowe. So my first question is, this is a person who's been critically important part of many community activities and events in my ward. She's gone. I don't know if she was sacked. I don't know if her contract was renewed. I don't know if she retired. I don't know if she took another job elsewhere. I don't know what went on.
Point of order, Mr. Deputy Chair. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be talking about individual council officers. I'm very happy to take this conversation offline with Councillor Johnston if she really has some issues that she'd like to discuss, but I don't think it's appropriate to be speculating on what may have happened to an individual.
Just one moment, Councillor Howard. Councillor Johnston, I support that point of order. I understand that there is references to the team's work in program areas, but there's nothing in relation to their employment or them staying or leaving. If I could bring you back to the report, I'd appreciate it.
So, can you just tell me what rule I'm not allowed to mention a council officer's name that you're referring to?
No, Councillor Johnston. So you've been in this chamber long enough to know that you can speak to anything that's within this report. But before you get up and continue, the report talks about the team's engagement in the program areas and with the community. It does not speak about their terms of employment or whether they are continuing in that role or not. So I'd just like to bring you back to your speaking point as to the team's engagement in the community.
Okay. Well, I do refer you to the report before us today, which refers to community development coordinators, which Donna Bowe was. But my point that I've been making is that the chair has stood up and told us to contact these people. We work with them and they just disappear. You try and contact the new one and they don't respond. So let me be clear about this. I am concerned that a very effective council officer has gone with no explanation. Now, we hear time after time, and thank you for your point of order, because next time they stand up and praise some retiring council officer, I'll certainly make sure to remind you of the words that you've just said
to your
about
point,
that.
if I could just interject, Councillor Johnston, the chair is
not
able
really.
to speak.
This is my time to speak. If I've done something procedurally incorrect,
no, Councillor Johnston,
welcome to
as the
raise
chair,
it with me, but you can't debate me. That's
no,
not how it works.
I'm not debating you, Councillor Johnston. I'm clarifying a point that a chair is able to speak on their portfolio at width, and you know that. So the point that you raised is actually false. So again, Councillor Johnston, you know the rules quite well. Speaking over me is not allowed under the rules, and I'm just simply clarifying your point as to what you choose to do in the future. So please continue.
Could you please tell me in the rules where you're entitled to debate what I'm saying and clarify the points that I'm making, which you just said?
Councillor Johnston, as the Deputy Chair of the Chamber...
I'd just like you to clarify in the rules where you're saying you can do this.
Councillor Johnston, it's quite clear in the rules, and I don't need to clarify. You've been in this chamber for a very long time, and you know that.
I'm seeking a procedural ruling, Mr Chair, about what point under the meeting's local laws you're referring to when you stand up and you say you can clarify my debate.
No, Councillor Johnston, I did not... No, Councillor Johnston, you made a misstatement in this chamber as to the conduct of a chair, and I was rectifying your misstatement, and you're free to speak.
Excuse me, I haven't made a misstatement. I'm so sorry. Which misstatement now are you alleging that I've made? Can you please tell me under the rules of procedure where you are allowed to correct, I just quote you back, a misstatement that I've made?
Councillor Johnston, you're wasting time of your own time, and I'm bringing you back, and if you'd like to continue speaking, please do so.
I'm seeking some clarity around where in the rules of procedure you can correct a misstatement that I've made. If you could please advise me.
And And also what the misstatement was. That'd be very helpful.
Well,
Thank you.
your misstatement was quite clear. You said that you would raise that point in the future when a chair was speaking about an officer. And I told you quite clearly that a chair is able to speak freely in their portfolio.
And you were at that point clarifying or debating my debate. So again, I draw you back to under which rule are you allowed to debate my debate?
Councillor Johnston, I don't accept what you just said. Please continue speaking on the report, or please sit down.
No, I'm speaking. I'm trying to speak, but you're interrupting me without any procedural reason to do so. And I would appreciate it that if you're going to interrupt me and tell me that I can't speak on something, that you make reference to the provision that you do it under.
Happily to do so. Meetings Local Law, Section 51(1) and 2, Councillor Johnston.
51(1) and 2, and what is it you've alleged I've done? Thank you. I'd just like to clarify. No, that's just about the precedence of the chair, I'm sorry. You interrupted me to say, without any substantive reason, this is my point, you have to administer the rules of procedure, not debate what I'm saying. So I'm sorry, the precedence of the chair does not actually allow you to just interrupt me when you don't like something I say. So again, I just seek your ruling as to which Meetings Local Law you're referring to. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston, also refer you to Section 50, subsection 1. Is there any further debate?
Yes, I'm still speaking.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm sorry, Section 51 is that councillors shall confine their remarks at all times to the matters immediately under consideration. Donna Bowe is a community development coordinator. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So are you saying that I'm being irrelevant to the report?
Point of order, Councillor Owen.
Mr Chair, in accordance with the Meetings Local Law, you have given a direction in regards to speaking directly to the report and the content of the report. That person is not named in that report, and I seek your ruling because Councillor Johnston is continuing to defy your ruling as chair in this place.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Johnston, I stated quite clearly that you can speak about officers. It references them clearly. It does not reference their terms of employment or whether they are still employed or not within the organisation. I simply referred you back to the report itself.
And let me go back to the report, which I was doing in the first place before, this, I don't know what you're trying to do. But my point here is that a very senior community development coordinator, Donna Bowe, no longer works at council. I don't know why. I've been given no explanation as to why. She was heavily involved with groups in my ward, and there is no explanation about why she's gone. We were told there's a new person. We've tried to make contact with the new person. The new person has not responded to us. So my point here today is that Councillor Howard has stood up and said, oh, there's all these wonderful people out there doing this great work in your community, and yet they don't get back to you. That's the point I'm making, and I know you don't want me to make it. That's very clear when you interrupt me. Now, the other thing that I'm going to put on the record with respect to the, and to be honest, I think it's appalling that there's been no explanation to us about what's happened here, and there'll be no attempt to do so outside of this either, I'm pretty sure. I want to put on the record the concerns that the Yeronga Community Centre raised with me. The Yeronga Community Centre made a submission to the New Jersey Flood Review about council's failure to make any contact with them at all during the floods. Not a sausage. So this is a critical organisation that, in the words of their coordinator, they have met annually with council for a decade since the last flood and were recognised in the state and council plans as a critical community response agency. And they made a submission to the New Jersey Review stating that council did not contact them at all during the floods. Afterwards, just in the last few weeks, somebody has. I find it astonishing that this council thinks it's actively helping groups in our community. if they don't have any time, resources or funding to support something like the Yeronga Community Centre during a natural disaster or the Sherwood Neighbourhood Centre during a natural disaster, that reflects poorly on council. And that's not me saying it, that is the community groups who were ignored by Brisbane City Council. And they have raised their concerns in writing through the De Jersey Review, which leads me to his recommendations, which have been ignored in this committee report before us today. He made some very specific recommendations about the importance of building community links.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Can I just ask where in the report this talks about the De Jersey flood review? The Community Development Officer report?
Sorry, excellent point, Deputy Mayor. It doesn't refer to the De Jersey report. Councillor Johnston, if I could then bring you back again to the report.
So this report for the LNP is called Building Thriving Communities Through Community Development. How do you think we might actually build thriving communities through community development? Goodness me, could it be you try and work with your local community centre? Could it be that when natural disasters hit and your volunteers swing into action, that they might expect a little bit of support from their council? Not this LNP. Councillor Adams thinks it's irrelevant to how the community development function in Brisbane City Council works. Paul De Jersey made really strong recommendations about how this council should enhance its community development functions and work more closely with community organisations and councillors. And this council had an opportunity here to say, yes, I accept those recommendations. We've already started a task force to start working on them. We're going to upskill our community development officers to liaise with councillors. Getting back to them might be the very first start, Councillor Howard, and perhaps you can talk to the team manager and get the relevant officer to get back to me.
Further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I definitely would like to say that I was misrepresented in the last comments around what I think is important for community development, and what I think is important for community development is supporting those fantastic officers that Councillor Howard was talking about there that are out on the ground, making sure that they are supporting our communities through whatever they are dealing with at this time, whether it's floods, whether it's ageing facilities, whether it's an ageing population within their actual community as well. All of these things are what we are experiencing through our community groups on the ground as local councillors, and it's fantastic to see our community development team working with our organisations and our residents to promote that equality and social justice within our groups, and making sure that those groups are then able to be shared with the community on a wider basis. Obviously, we've all got varying degrees of multicultural communities, youth communities, refugee and asylum seekers, older people and LGBTIQ+. I have to say, within my community, it's definitely the ageing population, particularly of our community groups. When I look at the Wellers Hills Bowls Club and our fantastic men's shed, many of our church groups that do a lot of community work as well, they all work very closely with our community development officers, and particularly to support them as we have an ageing executive in a lot of those community groups, and making sure that they stay connected, they stay inclusive, and they have the capacity to build their organisations to make sure that they have sustainability going into the future as well. Obviously, what we've seen over the last 2 years is rapid economic changes. Some of the opportunities of COVID have meant that community groups have fallen by the wayside. It's been too difficult to continue. However, some means they have boomed with COVID, and the one I mentioned before on the Wellers Hills Bowls Club have gone from less than 300 members in 2019 to over 1,300 members now since COVID. All the locals have found their fantastic local bowls club, and I have to say, speaking with the executive regularly there, they could not have done, thank you Councillor Howard, the work that they have done without the support of their community development officers. Whether it is work with working through the grants for the access and inclusion programs, making sure they're upskilled on what they need to do with their finances and they're moving forward to enlarge the business, or their connections through the sport and rec officers then for the bowls club aspects of it as well. And of course we have a fantastic community garden there. So the community development team have been absolutely priceless when it comes to helping these groups. And I think we need to remember that sometimes councillors don't know everything that the community development team do because they're just out there all day, every day, getting in there and getting the job done. There's many times that I found out the community development officer's been out there because I'm speaking to the groups going, oh, they were out this week, another person was out. I have 2 regions in my area, so they're slightly different on names there, but they're helping us with accessing our services, helping us to accessing our teams. And I think anything that keeps coordination between these subject matter experts when it comes to finance, sport and rec, community groups and sustainability is a fantastic way to move forward. So I would like to thank Councillor Howard and the officers, those that are there, those that have been there in the past, and those that are going to come into the fold and learn what a wonderful organisation it is to actually support our local community groups. Local councillors on the ground could not get this work done without them, and I want to thank them for that work that they do in all the realms of development in our community groups across Brisbane.
Further debate? Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair. I rise to speak on the report, and I think we've got some really good community development workers in council, and I think they do a really good job with the limited resources and time available to them. But I do think it's disappointing that the council administration hasn't invested enough in this space and that we have so few roles remaining. From what I can gather, we actually used to have many more community development workers within council, and it's been a process of gradual attrition where the territories that have been expected to cover have increased and the number in the team has reduced. And I think that's leading to a situation where they don't actually have enough time to do proper community development work. And I suspect that maybe quite a few of the councillors in this chamber don't really understand what community development work is in the true sense. Even though many of you are probably doing it on a regular basis, like a lot of the work that at least a good councillor does is essentially community development work of one kind or another. And that's something that I think should be celebrated and should be invested in more significantly. Unfortunately, this council doesn't seem to have a strong philosophical grounding in the importance of community capacity building. And what is sometimes described as community development work is actually service provision. And I think this goes to the heart of the sort of hypocrisy we see with the council administration, where on the one hand the council talks about wanting to reduce dependence on government and increase self-sufficiency and self-reliance. That's what community development work is, really. And the council should be investing a lot more in that. But instead, we continually underinvest in community development and community capacity building and continually reinforce dependence upon council to provide services. And I think long-term, the council is actually shooting itself in the foot by doing that. So I would much rather see many more community development workers hired by Brisbane City Council and empowered to actually engage in community development and capacity building as opposed to service provision or simply being an information sharing service. There's a lot of potential in this space. And talking to community development workers who work for some of the other regional councils, it does seem like some of the other councils are slightly better on this front. Their ratio of community development workers to the general population is higher, so they have, for the size of the constituencies they're representing, they have more community development workers on staff than Brisbane does. And they have more latitude to support and instigate new projects rather than simply trundling along with business as usual. And I think, I don't think this is any failure on the part of Councillor Howard herself, but I think there's a historical problem within the council in terms of how community development work is seen and undervalued, and that if we put more staff and resources into this space, we'd get significantly more out of it. It's kind of wild to me that, like, I think we have more council employees paid to clean up graffiti than we do in working as community development coordinators. Probably far more, in fact. And I think that really highlights where this administration's priorities are and where its gaps are. So I'm not trying to be too critical, but I would say to the council administration that of all the places to increase staffing and to put a bit more funding, this would seem to be one of the more obvious ones, because If you support those community development workers and you give them enough staff hours and enough resources to get the job done, that will increase the capacity of the formal community groups they're connected to, but it will also support informal community network and development and capacity building across the city, which in turn generates obviously the economic benefits and all that, but the deeper social benefits too. So hopefully down the track, maybe it'll take a change of administration, I don't know, but hopefully at some point in the future we can be, as an administration, hiring many more community development workers and giving them a much broader brief to actually do community development work. I don't know when that'll happen. I'm hoping that it'll be soon, because there's so much potential in this space. There is so much potential to build community capacity if we put the resources into it. And I just think it's so disappointing that we haven't realised that potential, and instead we've just gradually trimmed down the numbers year after year. I'd be interested if, in her concluding remarks, Councillor Howard wants to comment on how many community development workers we had when she started as a councillor. I don't know the exact numbers. I understand the numbers have dropped gradually. I think it was quite a few more under the Sawley administration era. Again, I don't know for sure, but it seems like there was a bit of a cut when Campbell Newman came in, and then gradually over the years, a few more community development roles have been cut. So we're now left with like 3 or 4 for the whole city. And the fact that we're losing some of those most experienced community development officers to other councils or to other roles, I think probably reflects quite badly on this council administration, because if those people are quitting when they've got pretty good pay and presumably decent conditions, if they still don't want to work for this administration, I think that shows that this administration is not valuing community development work as much as it should be. And I think that's a really big shame.
Further debate? Councillor Howard?
Well, thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. And one thing that I'm very grateful for is that the role of the community development officers has well and truly been discussed here this afternoon. So I am hoping that each and every councillor in this chamber takes the opportunity to read the committee presentation in full when it's put up onto ASDEC docs next week, as it is always. Every committee presentation that happens in the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee is put up for people to read. I understand that it's just my committee that gets to ask some of the questions in the committee, and I can tell you that the committee members very much appreciated what was provided to them in that committee. The presentation, I feel, will probably answer some of the questions of both Councillor Johnson and Councillor Sri, and I do hope that they take the time to read it, because the team's whole purpose for being is to build the capacity and to have sustainable organisations right across Brisbane. And I am absolutely behind them 100%. Now, if we just talk, I mean, we have almost 8,000 employees in that work for council. So I don't know when each and every one in my lifestyle area is coming and going and leaving, but I can tell you that Donna left of her own accord. And what a shame that today in this chamber, and it's something that I will rectify right now by saying, thank you, Donna. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because it's not just Donna, it's the Donnas that work throughout council, right throughout our council, each and every single day. Dedicated to a better Brisbane is just not a saying. These community development officers are the heart and soul of this organisation, and they work their guts out. And to have people stand up in this chamber and criticise the way that they have been this afternoon is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. And I just want to put on the record, and through you, Mr Deputy Chair, so I hope that there are some officers listening that know how much I value and appreciate every single thing that they do each and every day. Working with community organisations is a very stressful and, in fact, sometimes very distressing job. And so all of the support that we should be giving these officers is just what we should be doing. So I'd just like to again, put on record my great thanks to everyone.
Just one moment, Councillor Sri, point of order.
I was just checking whether Councillor Howard would take that question about the number of community development workers we have now relative to how many we used to have.
Councillor Howard?
I haven't got that information with me. But can I just say that look, you know, I'm a really nice person. If you want to ask me something, ask me. I'm happy to find out. I'm happy to tell you who your community development officer is. If you don't think, you know, if you want to see more of them, just let me know. You can drop an email and we've got wonderful staff that will be able to do that. So can I just say, once again, can I put on record our thanks to Donna Bowe and her years of service for council? And just to finish on a really high note, Councillor Cassidy, Say It to My Face is the latest song. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. I'll now put the motion. All in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillor Cunningham, Finance and City Governance Committee.
Mr Deputy Chair, I move that the report of the Finance and City Governance Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 31st of May be adopted.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Huang, that the report of the Finance and City Governance Committee meeting dated Tuesday the 31st of May 2022 be adopted. Councillor Cunningham.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if my mic was on there. Thanks, Mr Deputy Chair. It is now. Item A was the committee presentation, which was the Lord Mayor's Awards for Excellence. Quite fitting that we're talking about that this afternoon, because this initiative recognises the council staff and teams who go above and beyond to deliver great outcomes for the people of Brisbane. The awards recognise special achievement in categories including customer service, working together, value for money, innovation, environmental achievement, social justice and community development, performance leadership, leadership in economic development and health and safety. Councillors will be, of course, aware of the incredible work ethic of our staff, and that was made once again very clear during the presentation. There are too many award winners to mention, but I would like to provide some examples of the amazing work that has been recognised. One is the Asphalt Innovations team for their development of a low-cost bitumen used in suburban streets named Crumb Rubber Modified Asphalt, which incorporates crumb rubber from recycled tyres into our roads. In the social justice and community development category, the Brisbane Metro project team was recognised for the establishment of an accessibility working group to ensure we understand customer needs to deliver outcomes that improves the quality of public transport for people with a disability. In the Working Together category, a team of enthusiasts based at the Wacol Fleet Solutions workshop was recognised for their restoration of an abandoned 1939 Chevrolet that was part of Council's fleet during World War II. The team volunteered more than 1,300 hours of their own time, worked on rostered days off and weekends and stayed back after work. One member of the team even delayed his retirement to complete the restoration. The Chevy is being shown at local council events for future generations to enjoy and reflect upon council's history. Can I again acknowledge and congratulate all the council staff for their ongoing efforts, but in particular those award recipients of the Lord Mayor's Awards for Excellence. Item B, Mr Deputy Chair, was the regular bank and investment report for April 22, and I'll leave the rest to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Any debate? No debate. Although I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillors, I draw your attention to the notice of motion in item 6 on the agenda. Councillor Cassidy, would you please move the motion?
Thanks very much, Deputy Chair. I move that Brisbane City Council release the former East Brisbane Bowls Club building.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Cook, that Brisbane City Council release the former East Brisbane Bowls Club building. Is there any debate? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Deputy Chair. As we've heard over the last couple of weeks, this LNP Mayor has paused his plans to demolish the former East Brisbane Bowls Club for at least 2 years. And that's the LNP's plan. We know they wanted to demolish it. We now know through their public statements and through responses to requests for information of the CEO, we know that that's on pause for 2 years. So that's well established now. We know that the former community group that was occupying that building and providing services to the local community, Backbone Youth Arts, was removed and relocated recently, so that building is now sitting empty. That's a valued community facility in East Brisbane, in an area that is growing rapidly and an area that is home to both a lot of people and a lot of groups looking for their own homes to service the local community. It's now sitting empty, and as far as we know, the administration will continue to leave that building empty for at least the next 2 years before they intend to demolish it, something we don't support. It's a complete waste of a perfectly good community facility. We know there are 150 community clubs and organisations on the wait list for a community facility right around Brisbane, and I'm sure every councillor would have instances where community not-for-profit groups approach us looking for venues, and we know specifically in the eastern suburbs of Brisbane there are dozens that are desperate for a home at the moment. So we have a spare community facility here that will be left to rot. If it stays unoccupied, just like those mono-hull ferries were in the same part of the world. So this may be a part of this LNP administration's plan to let this building deteriorate before the bulldozers are able to come in 2 years' time. It'd certainly be an easier job. But Labor councillors want to see this valuable council asset utilised and maintained so we get the best out of it for the community. It has been for a long time a cultural hub for East Brisbane, and it should stay that way. We've argued that it should stay that way permanently, but this is a good way, at least in the immediate term, that it can continue to support the community that it has for so long. So I'd urge all councillors to support this motion today.
Further debate? Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I rise and speak to this motion. The Shriner Council has very exciting plans for Mowbray Park. There is no doubt about it. We are going to expand the park and provide more green space for the residents of the inner southeast of Brisbane. Brisbane has a great network of riverside parklands, and we were well on our way to enhancing that even further. From South Bank to Riverside Drive, Orley Park, Captain Burke Park and alike, Mowbray Park was set to receive a multi-million-dollar revamp. But no one would have anticipated what our city would go through another major flood event like this one we just have. And as a result of this flood, there has been a $330 million hit to our budget. Almost every single asset class was damaged, and right now we are focusing on rebuilding and recovering from this damaging rain and flooding event. This includes focusing on rebuilding damaged assets instead of rebuilding new ones. Councillors are now aware of all projects which have either been cancelled or paused, so we can make sure that our city can rebuild and recover. While we continue to focus on rebuilding and recovering, from February's weather event, we are also looking at ways we can better service our residents when it comes to council services, including making it easier for council officers to do so. Regrettably, one of the projects we had to pause was the Mowbray Park Vision. While the project has been paused, it is our intention to deliver it in full as soon as we can afford to do so. So in the interim, the former Bowls Club will be used for internal council purposes. It would be unfair to place a community group in the facility for a short period of time when council's intentions for the site are clear. With this said, we will not be voting for this motion. Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair.
Further debate. Councillor Sri.
Thanks, Chair. I rise to speak in support of this motion. I took issue with a few of the comments that Councillor Toomey made. I think the most laughable and ridiculous was that no one anticipated the February floods. Like, plenty of people have said that Brisbane is at high risk of flooding, and there was plenty of credible evidence that another flood was likely to occur. I think it's, you know, it's not, I don't want to go into detail, turn this into a conversation about flooding, but it really grates me when the council says, oh, who could have foreseen a flood? It's like, we've had a couple of those before, guys. Anyway, I think it's timely that the Labor councillors have brought this motion. I, for one, would really like to see the Bowls Club reopened as a community facility, and I think, as Councillor Cassie alluded to, there's a lot of support in the area for a new, or for it to be reinvigorated as a live music and performing arts venue in particular. I would note that during the recent floods, the Bowls Club also served as a drop-in space. I myself had a hot shower there one night, and I was really grateful after helping people clean out mud from under their houses, and in that week following the floods, the fact that there was a community space like the East Brisbane Bowls Club where people could come and have a hot meal and charge their phones, and it really was quite important to that local area. And it does boggle the mind, and through you, Deputy Chair, to Councillor Cunningham, I cannot understand why you would want to lose a community facility like that in an area where it has clearly been getting so much use and is so valued by the local residents. That week after the floods, when it was opened up as a drop-in space, there were people of all ages and demographics coming through there, grabbing a meal, cooking up together, connecting as a community. And we've seen that in the years past with its activation by Backbone and indeed by other groups that have hired the space off Backbone. Councillor Howard came along to a concert there not so long ago now, and I think saw firsthand just how popular the space was and how much potential it had as a venue. And I remember you through your Deputy Chair, Councillor Howard, you really enjoyed that gig, and you said so here in the chamber. And it just makes me feel really sad that councillors can come along and enjoy a performing arts show and then say a few months later, oh, but we're going to shut this place down. And yes, it's true that Backbone itself has been relocated several suburbs away, but the people of East Brisbane and that side of East Brisbane don't have any other community facilities in that area where they can gather together and enjoy, whether it's performing arts or just a drink with some mates in a non-commercialised context. And Councillor Howard, I do think you need to look closely at how your team is planning for community facilities across the inner south side, because there are some really obvious gaps, and that eastern side of Kangaroo Point and the northern half of East Brisbane don't really have access to many other community facilities that can be booked out for events or that can be activated by local groups. And the suggestion that it is acceptable for residents to just drive several kilometres across the city to another community facility in another neighbourhood, I think is really unacceptable. That's not how community facilities work. They should be there in the local community, ideally within walking distance of where people live. And I find it quite insulting when the administration says, oh, don't worry, Backbone's moved over to Seven Hills. That's a long way away for people in Kangaroo Point and East Brisbane. Can tell you that public transport to get there is crappy. It's bad enough in East Brisbane. It's a lot worse the further out you go. So Councillor Howard, by supporting this decision to shut down East Brisbane Bowls Club, is basically saying that anyone who doesn't have a car doesn't get to enjoy live music in the arts around East Brisbane, because you've robbed us of that facility. The other facilities in the area that council leases that I'm aware of are the Croquet Club, which is a very small building, and the Croquet Club can't share that with other, like it's not a suitable venue for the performing arts. There's a rowing shed that's controlled by Churchy down by the river in Mowbray Park, and I must say the Bowls Club was getting a lot more use by the community than the Churchy rowing shed, and the Churchy rowing shed takes up more space in the park. So again, I do wonder why we're not shutting down the Churchy rowing shed, but we are demolishing the Bowls Club. And apart from that, there aren't really many other community facilities in that immediate vicinity. There's also the soccer club further down. But yeah, we're pretty light on, considering that Kangaroo Point is, I think that northern part of Kangaroo Point is the most densely populated residential area in all of Queensland. And East Brisbane too is rapidly densifying, and these areas do need more community facilities. So the administration needs to be grappling with that rather than saying, oh, we're just going to demolish this. I am pleased to learn that the demolition has been delayed, and I think that buys the community some valuable time. I think the LNP's decision to support demolition of that facility will cost Councillor Cunningham her seat at the next council election. And I think that maybe that's a bit sad, because I think Councillor Cunningham is a nice person. I don't think she's the worst councillor on the other side of the chamber. But the administration... I'm not going to be that mean. But the administration has made a really serious error here. And I say again, I've said this before, if you change your mind on this, if you decide actually we're going to preserve that facility and reinvigorate it, or indeed upgrade and build a new community facility on that very site, I'll be the first to congratulate you and say, well done, you've listened to the community, you've made the right decision here. But right now you're not listening to the community, because the community is saying loud and clear that they want that community facility preserved. I don't know who else you're listening to. I don't know how the administration can have gotten this one so wrong. But I do know that we really need that space, and I'm grateful that the Labor councillors are continuing to support this struggle. I wonder a little bit strategically if we would have been better off just not talking about it at all, hope that they forget about it, and like 2 years then we can sort of reopen it. I sometimes worry that one of the main reasons the LNP decides to do something is because they just want to do the opposite of what the Labor councillors want. And that maybe this could be one of those cases. I hope I'm wrong, because I think I almost picked up one time in conversation with one of the councillors over there that they just didn't want to support this facility remaining because they thought that Labor really wanted this facility to remain. And it seemed like that was the main driver, was that the Labor councillors were calling for the facility to be preserved and leased out again, and the LNP was like, well, we don't want to give the Labor team a victory, so let's just shut it down and demolish it. It doesn't make sense from a cost basis. Like, the building is only 800 square metres. You're going to have to spend a lot of money to demolish that thing. We know there are concerns about the land it's built on having contaminated material as well. So your demolition bill alone is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for what, 800 square metres of additional green space? Even I can see that that's not a good deal, and I'm always calling for more money to be spent on public green space. But at a bare minimum, just for demolition, you're looking at a couple $100,000 to demolish this building, and then presumably hundreds of thousands of dollars more on landscaping it and reactivating it as a public park green space. That's not a good use of money. The LNP administration continually tells us that they're good economic managers, but this decision and proposal flies in the face of that. You've got an existing building which is structurally sound. Sure, it could do with some upgrades, but honestly it was functioning fine as it was. You've got an existing asset there that's in pretty good nick. Like I said though, open the windows, don't let it get mouldy, Councillor Howard. That's a good building right there. Why would you waste money knocking that down? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I do hope that with time the administration will come to see the value of that space. Like I've said previously, I think there is a case for some of the other parts of the Mowbray Park vision, for example, converting some of the car parking down by the river into usable picnic space. That was an idea I proposed quite early on, and I think it's a good idea, and I support those aspects of the vision. And I don't want to be misconstrued as saying I'm opposed to any upgrades or improvements to Mowbray Park, because I'm certainly not. But I'm very opposed to the suggestion that we should knock down a community facility at a time when so many community groups, so many artists and event organisers are crying out for more community spaces, particularly in that part of the city. I think it's woefully short-sighted. I think the administration has completely got this one wrong, and I hope with time you'll have the grace and decency to recognise that mistake and recommit to supporting this facility to be leased out again to another community group.
Further debate? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, Labor has brought this motion today because this LNP Council don't care about the future of the former East Brisbane Bowls Club or the East Brisbane community or the arts generally, and that's been made very clear again today. This LNP Council don't care about community groups. This LNP Council don't care about community facilities more broadly. And this LNP Council does not care about the harm that they have caused to so many people and organisations who have utilised the former East Brisbane Bowls Club and who have been involved in the Save Our Bolo campaign. There have been countless hours devoted by the dedicated community in East Brisbane and surrounds as part of the Save Our Bolo community to save this site from the LNP bulldozers. But this council consistently has treated them with contempt. A few short weeks ago, the plan to bulldoze this site was scrapped for now. We know that, but what we didn't see was any commitment or plan from this LNP Council to see that space utilised or activated, despite knowing that the facility would probably sit vacant for years. Despite having over 100 organisations waiting for community space in our city, this council has no initiative at all and no ideas about how to ensure our community groups are supported and that council facilities are utilised. So Labor has brought this motion to this place today to ensure the use of this space is maximised, that it is not left to rot by this LNP Council. The history of this issue in council is absolutely appalling. We've had representatives from Save Our Bolo come into the chamber, speak to us about the importance of this site to our city. They've asked to meet with the Mayor directly, have him attend on site, explain to him in detail the concerns they have and why this building is important to retain in the East Brisbane community. And the Lord Mayor of this city has ignored every single one of those requests. Even now, when we see this LNP Council and LNP Mayor put a pause on the bulldozers, he didn't even have the decency to speak with representatives of the Save Our Bolo community. The local councillor, Councillor Cunningham, couldn't be bothered to let her community know that it's been paused, that the bulldozers won't be rolling in, or engage in a conversation about how they would like to see this space used over the next few years. But, Mr Chair, Labor has. We've spoken with those representatives from the group and they want to see the site activated. They want to see the site utilised and they know how much community spaces are needed, not just on the south side, but across the city. And if anyone on that side of the chamber had bothered to have those conversations with the community, they would know that too. So Labor councillors are here this afternoon to support the East Brisbane community, and we're here to do that when their own LNP councillor, Councillor Cunningham, when this LNP council and this LNP Lord Mayor, who can't even be bothered to be here to have this discussion or debate, when they refuse to do so. So we've heard from Councillor Toomey, unclear as to why he's the one being stood up to have that conversation, but he talks about the exciting plans for the site, the exciting plans to bulldoze the former East Brisbane Bowls Club. He says we need to rebuild and recover from the floods. Sure, no one's disputing that. As Councillor Shree has pointed out, it was used during the floods for people as a drop-in facility. There was food available, there were hot showers, there were people charging their phones there. And guess what? The people who were there manning that site and ensuring that people had somewhere to go were members from the Save Our Bolo community. It is a genuine community facility, it's a genuine community space. I thank them for their ongoing advocacy to save this site. Hopefully, it's not bulldozed before 2024, so that the site can be retained, so that the site can be upgraded, so that we can see a future for community facilities in East Brisbane, not just letting the bulldozers roll in. So, Mr Chair, I encourage all councillors in this place to support this motion, particularly the local councillor, Councillor Cunningham, who hasn't stood up once for her community on this issue. She's just taken the line of the LNP, as she always does, as they all always do, and don't properly represent their communities.
Further debate? Councillor Johnston?
Yes, thank you. I rise to speak briefly on this item before us today. I'm quite astonished that the chairperson for this area, Councillor Vicky Howard, has not stood up and addressed the matter today, like Councillor Cook. I'm very surprised why she's sent Councillor Toomey out in her stead. Councillor Howard is the chairperson for...
Councillor Johnston, I'm sorry, just for a moment. Your microphone is flashing. You're good now, sorry.
Did we get any of that?
Start again. Please start again, Councillor.
Okay. I rise to speak briefly on the item before us today, and I thank Councillor Cook for bringing it forward. I am very surprised today about why Councillor Howard, the relevant chair in this portfolio, has not stood up to speak. Councillor Toomey appeared to be sent out to talk about a leasing issue that falls within the community portfolio. We just heard from Councillor Howard about how important it was for community development within communities and how we should all be working with community development officers. But this is a site where that won't be possible based on the LNP's plans. I also note, like Councillor Cook, that the local councillor hasn't stood up and spoke to this matter. Whether it's for or against, she doesn't have the courage to put her concerns on the public record, and I think that is a great shame for her community. That she wants to hide, I think, is the appropriate way to describe what's going on and not be part of a conversation, even if it's to say, well, there's all this other great stuff that's happening. It's not the local councillor saying that. The two people responsible are hiding behind their numbers in the chamber, and I feel very sorry for the people of East Brisbane and the surrounding suburbs that is the way in which their local councillor and the relevant chairperson is handling this matter today. It strikes me in listening to Councillor Toomey's explanation, and Councillor Toomey is the councillor for the Gap, nowhere near this. It strikes me that the reason he gave is because, well, we can't really have a short-term tenant in the building. That's one of the reasons, at least, that I heard. Well, this council has numerous community groups in council community leased facilities without leases and on short-term leases as well. So I don't see why that can be used as an explanation for denying a temporary lease or a year lease or 2 years. I think maybe they'd get out of this, and I think if we can activate this space, if the community, as Councillor Shree has pointed out, have the capacity and the energy to support community activities and community life in this part of Brisbane, then this council, as Councillor Howard said earlier today, should be supporting them. That is how we create thriving communities. And Councillor Shree said it in his speech earlier today. I feel very strongly that a lot of what I do in my job is about community development. It connects people, it empowers them, it supports their activities. And I've always taken the view that my job is to support the community group and assist them where they need help. I don't tell them what I think they should do. I support their activities. And I think it's really disappointing that their local councillor is not able to do that in this area. And the chair of this space, who is in charge of building thriving communities, doesn't even want to stand up and be part of this discussion here today. So I do thank Councillor Cook and Councillor Cassidy for putting it on the agenda. It's disappointing to hear that the LNP are just so opposed to even a creative licence. I mean, that you could go, okay, well, lease is all too hard. Let's licence the facility to them for the next year and see what they can do. It's not going to cost council anything. I think it's very disappointing that there's just no genuine consultation or discussion about how to actually build thriving communities. The LNP wants to stand up and say, yeah, great, we've got all these community development officers, but here is a community that is working together, that is doing things to support their neighbourhood, particularly in a time of natural disaster. And here is a community that I know has fought every single step of the way during this debauched process the LNP have run over the last few years. And it is so disappointing to see that there is, again, no genuine discussion, no involvement by the local councillor or the chair of this area. And this facility is going to sit there empty, getting more and more run down, and community groups who are desperate for space, desperate for somewhere to conduct their activities, are going to miss out on a space that could be used on an informal, flexible and temporary basis. And it is so disappointing that the LNP are so fixed in their way. They are so opposed to any kind of idea. They'll just say no to it without actually trying to work cooperatively to address the issue, to solve the problem. And that is why I see this city is going backwards under the LNP. I mean, the Lord Mayor's not here, the Deputy Mayor's not here either. This city is going backwards because the LNP, it's like those last 3 years of the Howard government. They're just doing what they want to do without any kind of real and genuine discussion with our local community. And when you get to that point in your term in government, it is time to go. And I suspect the people of Brisbane are going to have a lot to say about it in 2 years.
Further debate? No further debate. Councillor Cassidy, right of reply.
Thanks very much, Deputy Chair. It's a really disappointing response from the LNP in here tonight. I really did think that the local councillor, Councillor Cunningham, would have something to say about it, and I thought perhaps she was waiting for everyone to say their piece and then enter the debate on behalf of her community, the community who elected her in 2020 to be their voice in this place. And I think that's where the difference lies with councillors on this side of the chamber, and I include the Greens councillor and the Independent councillor and all those LNP councillors on that side of the chamber. We see our job as the political representative of the people who elect us. So we're their voice in this place. Whereas LNP councillors, and they have demonstrated that today, fundamentally believe that their role is to be council's representative in the community. And they don't, or even worse, Councillor Johnson, the LNP's representative and the LNP administration's representative in the community. And they don't work with them, they don't work alongside them, they don't walk alongside them, and they don't support them. And we see that here today. Councillor Howard is the chair responsible for community leases, and that's what this motion was about today. It was about a community facility that has previously, for decades and decades, and for generations in fact, been leased to community groups, and more recently had other arrangements like Councillor Johnston has described around licence agreements as well. Either way, council has for generations supported that community by supporting community groups in that site. And we heard from Councillor Toomey, the acting chair of the City Standards Committee, I think, the City Standards Committee, say that the plans to demolish this site were really exciting. And he described what would replace this site he thought would be green space, what he thought it was. He obviously hasn't looked at the plans. I mean, the original plan showed a new community centre on the site, and then when the LNP got in there and changed that around behind closed doors, what was produced to the community was bitumen car park to replace this site. So when Councillor Toomey, representing the LNP administration, gets up and says he's excited about new green space, where he says green space, you can read car park. So I don't think he has any idea what's going on here. But I suspect Councillor Cunningham has an idea of what's going on in her part of the world, and perhaps why she wouldn't speak on this item before us today and get on the record here is because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter in the long run at 2024, at the 2024 election, because I suspect the thoughts are going through her head that she may not be there, and they may be finding a more suitable and safe seat somewhere for that councillor over at LNP HQ, Deputy Chair. But either way, that community has been very badly represented by their local LNP councillor and very badly represented by an absent LNP Lord Mayor. I will now put the motion. Those in favour say aye. Aye.
To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division.
Division has been called by Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Cook. Councillors, ayes to my right, noes to my left. Clerks, please ring the bells. Clerks, please read the results.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 5 in favour and 7 against.
Motion is lost. I'll get the clerk to just read the result again, please, for the record.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 5 in favour and 17 against.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any petitions? Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I have a petition received requesting Council install traffic calming devices on Norman Parade and Bonnie Avenue, Clayfield.
Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. I have a petition requesting Council fund a comprehensive upgrade of the Brighton foreshore.
Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I have a petition from the good residents of Wingara Street regarding parking.
Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a petition calling for improvements to the 192 bus service and the change to a Blue City Glider stop, which has been emailed through.
Councillor Shree, your microphone was just flashing. I just need to double check.
It's all good?
No, it's good. Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I have a petition regarding King George Square.
And Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I have a petition on behalf of residents asking Council to clean up Oxley Creek post the floods.
Councillor Landers, may I have a motion for receipt of the petitions?
Mr Chair, I move that the petitions as presented be received and referred to the committee concerned for consideration and report.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Councillor Landers, seconded by Councillor Cassidy, that all petitions as presented be received and referred to the committee concerned for consideration and report. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Sorry, Councillors, are there any statements required as a result of an Office of the Independent Assessor or Councillor Ethics Committee order? Are there any matters of general business? Councillor Adderman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Deputy Chair, I rise to acknowledge a recognition in my ward last Friday, honouring a man whose vision and dedication ensures that we commemorate Anzac Day, that most sacred of days in Australian history, in an appropriate and respectful manner. Motorists travelling into the city from the western suburbs via the Western Freeway will have noticed a new addition on the cycle and pedestrian overpass near the Mount Cootha exit. That addition is a sign announcing Cannon Garland Overpass, which appropriately was installed during the time of the royal celebrations last weekend. To those wondering who Cannon Garland was and why the overpass has been named in his honour, I hope over the next couple of minutes to outline the appropriateness of this recognition. Cannon Garland was born in Ireland but came to Australia aged 22, initially to work in law, but he soon found his real calling, serving the then Church of England in a number of capacities both in Queensland and Western Australia. At the outbreak of World War I, Canon Garland was in Brisbane and served as a chaplain to soldiers in training camps as they prepared for active service overseas. He also organised the provision of Bibles and prayer books to Queensland soldiers at the front. As a senior Army chaplain, Garland worked tirelessly in the training camps in and around Brisbane and further afield. In 1915, he founded the Soldiers' Help Society. He also travelled Queensland as an honorary organising secretary of the Queensland Recruiting Committee, preaching to encourage greater enlistment. But it was after the war that Canon Garland is best remembered. History rightly acknowledges him as the architect of Anzac Day. Canon Garland served on the first Anzac Day committee, appropriately in Queensland from 1916 until his death in 1939. He basically oversaw the introduction of the core aspects of Anzac Day. Without his energy, there would have been no national public holiday to commemorate this day. No closing of pubs and shops until midday, no 1 minute silence, no universal script of service, and no New Zealand involvement. I thank the many people who supported the online petition to honour Canon Garland and the Department of Transport and Main Roads, which is ownership of the overpass, for consenting to this request. Chair, as I've outlined in this chamber before, Mount Cootha plays a key role in how the City of Brisbane remembers those who have served in the defence of our country over many campaigns. It is home to the National Australia Remembers Freedom Wall, which last year received a fresh coat of paint and a loop road signage completed. It's also a nice touch that the overpass can be seen clearly from that location of the National Australia Remember Freedom Wall. And one has to wonder if the visionary Brisbane architect, the late Robin Gibson, and former Veterans Affairs Minister, the late Con Shaka, had a sixth sense back in 1995 as to how this would pan out 27 years later. The Canon Garland overpass not only celebrates the achievements of the architect of Anzac Day, but creates an impressive marker of national significance at the entrance to the Brisbane Botanical Gardens. Chair, this is all part of a master plan for the Botanic Gardens, which has been progressively rolled out ahead of it being on show to the world in 2032. The first major step in the master plan will be the reopening of Bonsai House soon, which will see the largest collection of bonsai in Australia reclaimed in Brisbane. I look forward to updating the Chamber on progress on how the new gardens will take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further business? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, I rise to speak on flood recovery in Tennyson Ward. And just put on the record my concerns about the progress of flood recovery in the suburbs that I represent. So 9 of the 10 suburbs in Tennyson Ward are flooded and about 3,000 homes, many of them catastrophically, were flooded. In addition to that, of course, we had numerous community groups and community facilities that have been really badly damaged. So far, Council's response has been, I know they're trying their best, but it's been underwhelming. We're more than 3 months post the floods and Council still can't tell us which assets are to be replaced or repaired, which roads are to be replaced or repaired, and I really just don't think that's good enough. There is no timeframes available to residents about when parks will be cleaned up and open. There is no accountability and transparency in this flood recovery process, and that is where Council is letting residents down. I particularly want to note that this Lord Mayor stood up in this council a week ago and asked us to vary the budget to spend $330 million of this year's budget on council clean-up. And obviously there'll be money in the new budget that will be allocated to council clean-up. But the Lord Mayor asks for these funds but will not share with residents where that funding is going, what the time frame for delivery for that funding will be. And 3 months and a couple of weeks on since the floods, I don't think that is good enough. And the residents in the suburbs that I represent don't think it's good enough, and it's not something that I will defend any longer. The Lord Mayor stood up today, and unfortunately it's Councillor Toomey who is responsible for this, and that is the answers to the questions on notice. And unfortunately, the Lord Mayor stood up today and has completely contradicted publicly Councillor Toomey's response to the questions I asked on notice. And I want to draw those to the Chamber's attention. I asked for a list of flood-damaged streets by name and suburb in Tennyson Ward identified by Council for resurfacing. Now, I know that Council has this because the officers have told me that they have done the work, that they have done the lists. But the answer provided by Councillor Toomey to the agenda today, and I'm sure he's got this information from somewhere, I don't know where, but he is the person responsible for this, is, and I quote, "The information is still being compiled. An accurate list is not currently available." Now, the Lord Mayor has stood up in here week after week and said that council officers have been out there, they've surveyed the roads, they know where the flood went. Councillor Adams has stood up week after week and said they've surveyed everywhere, they know where the floods were. And yet, here we can't get a list of the streets in Tennyson Ward that were flood damaged and that are listed for either repairs or replacement. It's a very simple question. Council has allocated $330 million of this year's budget and millions more in the budget next week, but Council still can't provide a list of flood-damaged streets in the ward, and I don't think that's good enough. That is just appalling lack of accountability and transparency. And I think that the Chair of City Standards and the Infrastructure Chairman need to take a pretty good hard look at why they can't, 3+ months on from the flood, tell us which streets are going to be repaired. I also note my other question, which is, please provide a list of flood-damaged playgrounds identified for replacement by park, name and suburb. Now, that's a simple request about flood-damaged playgrounds identified for replacement by park, name and suburb. We do know that there are 800-odd parks in Brisbane that were flooded. And for a month now, we have been receiving, all councillors that were flooded, for a month now we've been receiving this weekly update from the council officers which talks about park and playground recovery. And the headings we are given are debris cleaning, pressure washing, toilets cleaned, trees requiring work and softball. Now, for the past month, this has been wrong when it's been provided to me. But what this map doesn't say, or this report that each of us is being given, is which playgrounds have assets that need to be replaced and which parks and playgrounds have facilities that need to be repaired or replaced. It's pretty basic information. Again, the officers have been telling us for weeks and weeks that they have done the surveys, that they know where the problems are. They just can't tell us, apparently. They don't want to be accountable to the people of Brisbane. And I don't know what is going on. Why is it to every single council officer listening out there that you are unable to share with your local councillor and the community of Brisbane who pay your salaries why there is no list of which park playgrounds are going to be upgraded or replaced? We heard today, of course, that in a marginal LNP ward in the western suburbs, we know exactly which bridge is damaged and which footpath, and they're going to get fixed up right away. But when you ask for that list for Tennyson Ward, it's not available and it hasn't been compiled. Now, I know that that is fundamentally untrue. We have been hearing for weeks from officers that they have done these assessments. So where are they? We know the Lord Mayor stood up today and he absolutely dropped the two chairs responsible for this, Councillor Toomey and Councillor Wines, right in it, when he said in answer to my question he knew exactly what needed to be fixed after the floods. Yet here we are, when being asked to publicly account for the recovery of flood-damaged public assets, this administration says there's no such list. There is no list. They didn't provide the partial list they might have. They didn't provide the list of streets and say, well, you know, these are the 10 we've already identified and we're still looking at others. They didn't do that. Transparent and accountable government means that you have open and transparent communications with people. You don't hide and say 3.5 months on you don't know where things were damaged and you couldn't possibly provide a list. So I don't think it's good enough. It's a bit like last week's answers to the questions on notice. And again, Councillor Toomey, you need to be reading these before you approve them to go onto this agenda, because one of the questions last week was how many complaints have there been about mowing in the city? This councillor actually said none. None. I know that I'm reporting at least one a day through to council, including with photos to Councillor Toomey himself. It is diabolical that this administration thinks that no one is complaining about mowing. And I notice all the heads have gone down, because you can't be a local councillor and not have complaints about mowing. I just can't wait to share that in my next e-newsletter with residents in my ward. I honestly think that, that the LNP have become completely disconnected from reality if they don't think people are complaining about mowing in the suburbs of Brisbane. It's happening every single day. And there are lots of reasons for it. It's been very wet, we all understand that. But what people don't know is that there are cuts to the mowing budget that have been presided over by the LNP. So I just think that there is a real problem when this administration will not be open and transparent about flood recovery. Remember, this is the question that I asked. Please provide a list of flood-damaged streets by street name and suburb in Tennyson Ward identified by council for resurfacing. Now, the floods happened on the weekend of the 26th and 27th of February. It's now the 7th of June. Apparently, no list exists about which streets in Tennyson Ward, a badly flooded ward, are going to be repaired or resurfaced. There is no list, according to this LNP administration. Again, I will be telling the residents of my ward that either this information is being hidden for political reasons, or quite frankly, this council must be incompetent that 3 months on, they've not been able to produce a list of flood-damaged roads in Tennyson Ward. Equally, the flood-damaged playgrounds. There's only about 20 playgrounds in my ward that were flood-damaged, and I'd like to know what, if any, of them are going to get replaced. There's nothing on the list for the last month that we've been provided with to say that they are. I know that many have been flooded now twice or 3 times, and I'm very concerned about them going forward. It's not good enough.
Your time has expired. Any further general business? As there is no further general business, I declare the meeting closed.